Remember when you were a little kid and saw your first deer?
Oh, how cute.
As an adult, maybe you've had a different experience.
Where'd that come from?
Bambi mess up your dream machine? Call Cody's Auto Body today at 304-901-4777 and get the work done right the first time. Cody's Auto Body, 851 Wilston Street in Martinsburg, has a team of auto body professionals with a lifetime of experience putting your ride back together again, regardless of how it got that way. Cody's Auto Body.
Mayhem is everywhere.
I'm your new bangs, and you can't stop staring at me. That's it. Just tilt the rearview mirror over here. And while you're checking me out more times than a library book, your car is wandering into that lane over there. More bangs. Neat. And if you've got cut rate insurance, you could be paying for this yourself. So get Allstate.
Call Martinsburg Allstate agent Gary Kelly today at 304-263-4596.
I had to pack up all my things. I had to leave my home. And I never knew where I was going next. It felt like I never even had a say. But then you came along.
Change a child's story. There's a child in foster care waiting for a volunteer like you.
To change a child's story, go to mycasaep.org. Floodwaters can spread E. coli bacteria. Here's Bill Kearns from the Berkeley County Health Department about what to do if your well is tested positive.
If it's just a one-time contamination, you can superchlorinate your well, which we have instructions at the health department. They could call and talk to us. You're providing an excessive amount of bleach down the well. Then you do a runoff to get that out of the system, to get the bleach through your lines, get any contamination out of there. You do a runoff of so long, and then you can have it tested again.
The Berkeley County Health Department, 122 Waverly Court in Martinsburg. Call 304-263-5131.
Ever try to collect on an insurance claim? Perhaps a homeowner's claim, auto accident, or fire. Insurance companies collect money from you for protection should something bad happen. And when it does, they don't want to pay, or they offer too little. At Mansion Ferretti, we have an attorney who worked defending insurance companies and knows all the dirty tricks they play to deny or lowball your claim. Call us today for help in getting what you really deserve. Mansion Ferretti, when you need justice.
Orsini's, not just an appliance store anymore. They're your one-stop resource for all home needs, whether it's custom kitchen design, countertops, or cabinets, or check out their new sleep studio with Tempur-Pedic, Sealy, and Stearns & Foster. For all of your outdoor living needs, Orsini's has Gladiator Garage Works, Traeger grills, barbecue accessories, barbecue rubs and sauces, and every flavor wood pellets. Visit their brand new 8,200 square foot showroom at 360 Hack Wilson Way, 304-267-7251, Orsinis.com.
Hi, this is Rob for my friends at the Miller Auto Group who have asked me to assure you that they're here to help, to assist you in any way they can. The people at the Miller Auto Group understand that buying a new vehicle may not be the number one priority in your life during this time of uncertainty. If it is a priority, rest assured they are open and ready to meet your needs and wishes. If staying at home is a priority, remember, we're just a click away online or as close as your phone if you have questions and need answers from experts. Our service departments are in full operation, as is our parts department, to address any emergency repairs or maintenance issues. For 65 years, the Miller Auto Group has always been committed to providing customers with a pleasant experience. That's never been truer than right now. The bar has been raised and their commitment renewed. Visit any one of our Miller locations, Apple Valley Chevy Toyota or Miller's Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram in Martinsburg, or Miller Honda, Miller's Cross Point, or Apple Valley Hyundai in Winchester. This just may be the perfect time to drive home a Miller today. DriveMiller.com.
Erie Insurance says here's to the grown-ups who move, mortgage, mow, and still bust a move. But does your home insurance still fit? Erie helps you protect the home you've grown into, all at fair prices that are often less than the other guys. So how do you find the right coverage? Magic. Nope. Local independent agents who get to know you like this.
Your local Erie agent in Martinsburg is Smallwood & Small Insurance. Get a quote at smallwoodandsmall.com.
Erie Insurance.
Energy is something you never really think about, even though you use it every day. With Roach Energy's no run-out guarantee and 24-hour customer support, that's just the way we like it. So when you think about it, call Roach Energy for all your oil and propane needs. Ask about our pre-buy and budget programs. Roach Energy, 304-262-4271.
When you do the same thing for 135 years, you learn to do it well. For 135 years, we've been helping families through the hardest times of their lives. That's because we're a family as well. When your family loses a loved one, we're here to help. We're Brown Funeral Home in Martinsburg, Inwood, and Charlestown, Ranson. We're here when you need us.
Welcome to the Stubblefield Institute and WRNR TV 10 2020 Debate Doubleheader. Tonight's debate will feature the Republican and Democratic candidates in the West Virginia 16th Senatorial District, Patricia Rucker and Pete Doherty, and the Republican and Democratic candidate for West Virginia Secretary of State, Mac Warner, and Natalie Tennant. And now your moderator for tonight's doubleheader debate, David Welsh.
President Dr. Mary Hendricks and our entire university community, welcome to our debate doubleheader presented by the Stubblefield Institute for Civil Political Communications, WRNR Radio, and Martinsburg TV 10, featuring the Republican and Democratic candidates for the 16th Senatorial District, Patricia Rucker and Pete Doherty, and the Republican candidates for West Virginia Secretary of State, Mac Warner and Natalie Tennant. I'm your moderator, David Welch, director of the Stubblefield Institute and co-host of WRNR's Eastern Panhandle Talk with Rob and Dave. We're in the beautiful Marinoff Theater on the campus of Shepherd University, home of many great CATF performances. Although the debates are live tonight, there is no live audience. With the exception of the two candidates at the podium and me, face coverings are required at all times by our behind-the-scenes technicians and crew members. We'll start with the 16th Senatorial District, Senator Rucker and Sheriff Doherty. Welcome to the Stubblefield Institute, and thank you both for agreeing to this forum. This debate will be divided into three broad categories. The first category is the important issue of education and education reform. The second category will be focused on jobs and the economy. The third and final category will be health care. All questions have been drafted by my staff and by me, and no one outside our staff has seen these questions. The rules are as follows. You will each be given 2 minutes to speak, whether you are speaking first on the topic or rebutting your opponent. However, as the moderator, I reserve the privilege of asking follow-up questions and staying on a topic for longer than planned. At times, this could result in a back-and-forth discussion. At the end of the debate, each of you will be given 2 minutes for a closing statement. I would like to remind you, the Stubblefield Institute and those in the community that supports us place great emphasis on civility and constructive debate. Nice to have you both. I've interviewed you both many times over the years, and I have great respect for both of you. And as I said, I'm so grateful that you would take the time to participate in this debate. I know there's been other debates along the way. This is tough stuff, running for office, and I admire you both for putting your names out there and your candidacies, and I wish the best to both of you. Let's start with charter schools. We'll get right to the meat of a lot of controversy over the past couple of years. Senator Rucker, as chairwoman of the Senate Education Committee, you have been a leader in educational reform. Your reforms have resulted in teacher and school personnel pay increases, block grants for Jefferson and Berkeley County school districts, and other measures that are universally supported. However, you have met with stiff opposition to your reelection from teachers and the school personnel and the teacher unions who oppose charter schools. Can you speak to your education reform bill and specifically to your defense of charters?
Thank you so much, David, for that great question. And first of all, let me thank you for this opportunity and thank the Stubblefield Institute for hosting this. So yes, I will be very happy to speak about charter schools. And the reason for why I push so hard to have that included as part of our education reform. So there is no secret that West Virginia, although we are one of the top states in funding for education, I believe we're 14th in the nation, we are not getting 14th in the nation results from that investment. So I pledged and I campaigned on this when I ran 4 years ago to improve education and to put more emphasis on reform so that we would have more money locally, we would have more local control, and we would have some school choice. Charter schools, public charter schools, is something that is allowed in 46 out of the 50 states in the United States. All of our surrounding states have charter schools, with the exception of Kentucky, where it's legal, but they haven't started one yet. So this is not a novel idea. Charter schools have been around, public charter schools have been around for over 20 years. And there are some right over the border in Maryland, in Hagerstown, that I know constituents who live here in West Virginia who are driving their child and paying to send their child to that charter school because it's a choice that they made. That particular public charter school is a charter school for the arts. So just like in this beautiful theater, their child is interested in the arts, is very talented in some artistic way, and they want their child to have the opportunity to express themselves and to be able to immerse themselves in that world in addition to their academics. So public charter schools is an option. It is something that public schools could have within their school building, or it is something that they could do separately. Or a private, nonprofit organization could also organize a public charter school. There's one in Virginia that is called the Farm School, where the emphasis is on agriculture. So they're learning all of the subjects that they need to learn in school, but they're using what they're learning in agriculture, in growing things, in actually selling things, and they run a store. So they're using their math skills in a real-world environment. I think it's a wonderful opportunity to expand the incredible education that we are already providing and to give parents more choice.
Thank you, Senator. Sheriff Doherty, you have been somewhat neutral on the issue of charter schools, not really opposed to them, but not a champion of them either. As you look at Senator Rucker's education reform efforts, can you point to the areas of disagreement that you have on specific provisions of her legislation and tell us what you might have done or would do differently?
Well, there are several things. First of all, let me thank you and the Institute for having this opportunity to be here today. One of the things that Senator Rucker points out is that she talks about public charters and those kinds of things. The legislation that was originally introduced would allow a lot more charters than are currently allowed. It did not require them to be nonprofit. It did not require them to be approved at the local level. That's part of the fundamental difference. Public charters, I think, have some merit, but I think what you will find if you look at the evidence is charter schools are not really very effective in counties and states of low-density population. And charter schools really hurt public education in the main. And so in large metropolitan areas, in very large school districts, where transportation can be made. I have a grandson who went through a public charter school system. They have about a dozen high schools, and they identified certain schools for arts and engineering and public safety and those kinds of things. That may have some merit, but in West Virginia it really does not have merit in my view. And what it does is it takes resources away. This is not like a no-sum change. What it does is the school aid formula is based on the number of children you have in the public schools. And if you take a charter school and you take a middle school, for example, and you start a middle school charter, you're taking kids out of that school district and out of that school. Now, what's the first thing that's going to get hurt in the process? It's going to be counselors, it's going to be art, music, physical education, health, those kinds of things that are there. I also think it's really important to note that I have 25 years of experience of being a local school board member. I know how difficult it is to make that budget work and to do the things that you need to do. But I'm afraid as you disperse the community effort to make public schools better, what you end up doing is weakening public schools as well. So I think that also hurts as we go forward. And last but not least, I know Senator Rucker feels like she's doing the right thing and being helpful, but if you look at the record, virtually every public school group, teachers, service personnel at the state and county level, and multi-counties in West Virginia who have endorsed me and provided campaign contributions to me do not think she's right. And, you know, we always want to talk about, you know, listen to the local people and the local experts. Well, the local experts have resoundingly said that Senator Rucker has been wrong. Has been wrong.
We all know what a good time looks like, but what is it made of? We can think of a few things. In this case, it's handcrafted food to gather around, an ever-changing variety of wine, and a Friday night. Do yourself a favor. Experience the good in a good time.
At Anthony's Pizza Inwood location, nobody does it better. We make our own dough and we bake it fresh twice daily. That's freshly baked twice a day to make sure your pizza always tastes great. Take advantage of our
employees and school personnel have a stable and reliable source of education, and we hired hundreds and hundreds of employees. One of the things they were always concerned about is, what will my health insurance benefits be as I go forward? Now, David, it's actually very timely, because if you will recall 2 years ago this month, when that was a very hot issue and many public employees were very concerned about the election coming up, the governor had a meeting with Republican members of the House and Senate and said they were going to fix this problem 2 years ago, make a permanent fix. That hasn't happened. Now, you can blame the Democrats if you want, but the Republicans had a clear majority in both the House and Senate, and that problem has still not been resolved. Here we are two years later, and the governor was having a press conference yesterday that is Ms. Rucker referred to earlier today as a bipartisan effort, but there were no Democrats invited to that to deal with another kind of issue. What we have to do is we have to find a specific funding source. We have, in the last couple of years, put together enough money by taking it out of other things to pay for public employees' insurance. But what we really have to do is find a funding source to make that, so we don't have to try to figure out what do we cut in other places to make it happen. I can't tell you that I know what the answer is, but I can tell you that I've had 40 years of experience of looking at problems and finding creative ways to come to a solution.
Senator Rucker?
Thank you. PEIA is fully funded. We are funding it completely and totally. There's been no cuts in PEIA, and it is a very important thing for all of our state employees to understand that. So when he talks, or when my opponent mentioned that we need to find a reliable funding source, there's like 3 or 4 different funding sources that specifically says a percentage of this money is going to go into PEIA. Right now, we've actually funded it over what even they estimate that they need. But in reality, I will tell you that one of the goals of the task force that the governor created has not come to fruition, and that is to really find a solution and a reform of PEIA. I do believe that there are savings that could be found that we are not really working hard to find. You know, could we do it more efficiently? I believe that there are ways. One of the ways is telemedicine, which a lot of us now have had to use because of the pandemic that we are going on. Well, PEIA has been very slow to adopt efficiencies in using telemedicine for people. And I know that where we are here in the Eastern Panhandle, very far from Charleston and very far from Morgantown, sometimes we do not have access to the medical resources that we need. And I fought to make certain that those of us who are on PEIA and on state insurance, I shouldn't say us because I'm not one of those, but folks who are in the Eastern Panhandle have access to getting care coverage here locally, so they do not have to go all the way to Morgantown for cancer treatment or other things. So that's one of the changes that I push for. Can there be more? Absolutely. And I have to tell you, I really believe in rewarding our state employees because they are the backbone of what we're doing. We need to thank them for the incredible work that they do, provide them security, and know that we're going to be taking care of them.
Thank you. Did you want to add on to that, Sheriff?
One further point.
Yes, if you keep it brief, please.
Yes.
Okay.
Ms. Rucker points out that somehow she's made a change so you don't have to go far away to get these services. 15 years ago, 16 years ago, my wife was dying of cancer. She got a diagnosis. She didn't have to go to Charleston and she didn't have to go to Morgantown for PEIA to come in and help provide the coverage that she needed. And she got her treatment out of state. She went to the University of Virginia and got her treatment. So this is not something that Senator Rucker has suddenly made a change that you don't have to do. I would agree, and you're talking to a person who spent 19 years working for the largest healthcare agency in the country that led the way in many ways on telehealth and involved in programs today that provide telehealth services. There are things that can be done better, but the real problem is that we don't have a real solution. And we need a real solution that we don't have to figure out every year where are we going to find the money to fund PEIA. That's the problem.
May I please?
Yes, you may.
Thank
Keep
you.
it very brief, Senator.
Yes, of course. I just want to point out that obviously my opponent didn't realize that some of the efficiencies that PEIA board was trying to push for was to limit the number of places you could go, including trying to force West Virginia state employees to stay within West Virginia. And it was because of the efforts of I and other legislators that they did not push that change.
Let me turn our attention to school safety during the COVID-19 period. It has gotten a lot of attention lately, as it should. Many teachers and parents are concerned that public schools are not safe enough from the spread of the COVID-19 pandemic. Starting with you, Senator Rucker, followed by outline your intentions for strengthening school safety during the next legislative session.
Well, that's a really important question, and as State Senate Education Chair, obviously something I've been informed on with our superintendent, not just locally, but also state superintendent, about how can we ensure that we're prepared. So number one, making certain that there is enough personal protection equipment. Number two, that there is adequate cleaning, and that requires paying staff, having the right products for that. Also, we need to reimagine what a classroom, traditional classroom, is like. So there's discussions as to can we do things better and differently, but still allow that in-person interaction, which is so important. And one of the things I'm very glad that I pushed for in the last 2 years, it was because of a bill that we passed in 2017 that most public schools had a virtual option, first of all. But second of all, we got additional funding and support for social mental help, and that is definitely needed. It was needed before, but needed even more now. This is causing a lot of stress, not just to our kids, but also to the staff. We need to be able to help them through it and educate them on what are best practices, how to stay safe, how to stay healthy. All these measures are things that got pushed forward without ever envisioning something like this pandemic, like this virus. But thank goodness that those things happened. And obviously, in the next session, we have to ensure that we have adequate funding so that no public school has to be worried about not having the protection for the students or the staff, and that they have everything that they need.
Sheriff Doherty, your thoughts?
Well, my whole background, obviously, for many years has been in safety and security. And when I was on the Board of Education, we did a lot of things to provide, locks on doors and to make schools more hardened so we didn't have intruders. Under the current situation with COVID, the problem that I have seen is that we knew COVID was a problem in the beginning. The day after it came out, I started wearing one of these. And I've been wearing a mask in public ever since then. And what we haven't done is we haven't done enough to help public schools. If you talk to classroom teachers, if you talk to school employees, what you will find is that they are not, even today, feeling that they're well prepared. They don't think they have enough equipment. They're not testing students. They're not doing welfare sort of checks coming in and coming out. Ventilation systems. If I had been involved at that point and could have been involved, what I would have been doing is saying, get the legislature to take some action with the $1.25 billion the feds were sending down, and let's make sure the ventilation systems in schools are working. Because you can separate me, but if I don't have a ventilation system, obviously it's going to make the system worse. Now, I would have been in favor of doing that, and Senate Democrats, among others, and I think a couple of Republicans did sign. They wanted to come back and deal with that issue. Ms. Rucker and many others, the majority said they did not want to come back and let this would sort of play itself out, and after it was all done, they'd come back and do something else. I think what you have to do when you see a problem is you have to take action on the front end, and the way to do that, it seems to me, is to make sure we had enough personal protective equipment, we had enough ventilation, we had some additional staffing and so on that's needed. I mean, I can tell you from my job in law enforcement, it has required us to have additional people. I mean, we have jury trials, we have things like that. We have to socially separate people. That requires us to have more staff in order to do it. The state hasn't done nearly enough, in my view, to make employees safe, but also to make children safe and to bring the people home. And let us remember that there are many, many children in West Virginia whose primary caretaker are grandparents and elderly folks. And many of them do not necessarily become symptomatic when they get it. So what happens is they may be asymptomatic, they catch it, they go home, and then they give it to their family members. That's a concern I think we all need to be concerned about.
Let me follow that question up with one that's similar. The two counties that you now represent, Senator Rucker, and you hope to represent, Berkeley and Jefferson County, have gone about this. Their approach has been some students are in person, some students are remote. Overall, briefly, Senator Rucker, your thoughts on the way the school districts have approached this? It's not necessarily a Senate question, but I'd be interested in your thinking on that.
Well, I will tell you that I am grateful that we push for local control so that local counties could make decisions as to what they thought was best. And Jefferson and Berkeley have both benefited from that by determining on their own how best to handle it. And this summer, they sent out surveys. They asked their parents for their opinion, which I think was really good that they did that. Now, there are a mixed group. There are some who really prefer to just stay at home and not send their child into school, and there's a lot of parents who really wanted their child in the classroom. And same with the teachers. There are some teachers who were nervous and are still nervous about being in the classroom, and there are some teachers who really wanted to be in the classroom. So this is exactly the reason to push for local control, because there's not one size fits all. And in terms of how I feel they've handled it, I think they've done the very best they can. We're in a new situation. No one prepared for, no one really expected. And considering the challenges that we've been facing, I have to applaud the staff, the administrations. I have to applaud our state Board of Education and our health departments. Everyone's just doing the very best they can. Can you do things better? I'm sure. It is really easy to be a Monday afternoon quarterback and talk about, oh, well, this should have happened. But really and truly, I think everyone is just doing the very best they can.
I think you meant a Monday morning quarterback, but we'll let that one go. Sheriff, do you have any?
Yeah, I know many teachers and many other school employees, and they are doing the absolute best they can. I don't think there's any of them that would prefer to be doing this virtually. I think all of them would like to have kids back in class. Virtual learning is very difficult because it's simply hard if you're sitting in front of a computer screen to see whether or not the kid's paying attention. I have an education degree. I student taught. I've been in classrooms for decades. You don't get the same kind of feel. I was actually, we were swearing in a new deputy today, and he has 2 children, one who's virtual and one who's in school. And why? Because the one who is virtual can do it virtually and is motivated to be a virtual learner. The other one didn't have that kind of motivation and needed to be in classroom. The problem I see is that teachers are really getting stressed because they're trying to do both. They're trying to do both virtual and in class. And that makes it very difficult. The whole way you approach your lessons and what you do and how you respond is very difficult. But I give great credit to everybody, from the bus drivers to the cooks to the service personnel to the classroom teachers and the administration. I mean, I think they're all doing the best they can, and I would agree that it is really not something that we had anticipated. I don't think that any of us really thought we'd see the point that schools across America would be closed down, and not only closed down temporarily, but closed down for perhaps as long as a year. And I'm afraid that what we're seeing right now, if you look at the number of positive responses, the number of positive COVID cases is going up, and that may make us in the near future go totally to virtual learning, which I think is not the most effective way to do it. It doesn't reach as many kids.
It's interesting, and it just occurred to me that both of you have teaching degrees. I find that to be interesting, and when you mentioned that you had a degree, I already know Senator Rucker did as well, so I guess I don't
know. I have a secondary education degree. I didn't know what Senator Rucker's degree is.
Well, I know she was a teacher, but she can talk about that on her own. That's not for me to talk about. Let's talk about teachers, though, and specifically teacher retention. It's no secret that border counties, as we had talked about a little bit before, counties such as the 2 counties you're both running to represent, Jefferson and Berkeley counties in the state Senate, face enormous challenges in retaining teachers who are either retiring early or seeking employment in higher paid jurisdictions. We'll start with you, Sheriff Doherty. Your plans to address this issue, and Senator Rucker, you'll be able to follow up.
Well, there are 2 things. First of all, I think that the people who work in public education need to know that their legislative people are doing what they can to help them, both to get the financial resources and the policy changes that will make their job more effective. I have served on a board of education for a long time. We suffered with a lack of getting fully certified people. I know what difficulty it is to get certified people. Less and less folks are going into education now than before. We have to do a better job to recruit and retain, but the first part is the retention part. And let me tell you, when I served on the Board of Education, what we would find is we would go to college fairs, and what they do is they put a little tent flap up, and it'd have your school district and had what the starting salary was. Well, if you're a young person and you're really not wedded to go to anywhere in particular, you have to really sell me hard as to why I'd come to Jefferson County versus Loudoun County. And actually, if you look, you'll find that there are probably more, I know there are more public school teachers who live in Berkeley and Jefferson County than teach in Berkeley and Jefferson County. Why? Because they get the higher salary and they figure that the cost of doing that. Locality pay has got to be a particular factor to it, and it's not just saying you can do it, you have to have it funded. And I know that's not an issue that's very easy at the state level, but I can tell you that when I was serving on the West Virginia School Boards Association, we faced a similar issue with transportation cost. Because if you're in Pocahontas County, you have about 1.1 student per square mile. That's a lot of kids between a bus stop. And what we did is we changed the formula to give more money to schools there. What we have to do, and we haven't done well enough, is to provide enough money to make it interesting and exciting for somebody to come here and say, okay, if I'm going to live in Jefferson and Berkeley County and my housing cost, which is the biggest single factor in determining that, is 3 and 4 times what it is in most of the rest of the state, then we have to provide additional funding for those folks to work here.
Senator Rucker, teacher retention is the topic.
Yes, thank you. And I'm grateful that my opponent supports locality pay, which we finally legalized in West Virginia, although there was a lot of opposition. It is super important that we be able to do everything we can to retain those highly qualified teachers and, of course, recruit more. And one of the steps is, of course, locality pay and being able to compete with the surrounding areas, which all the areas around us do pay more. But I also, in speaking with teachers, can tell you that they consider it just as important that they be treated like professionals and that they be respected. So part of the things we've already done is try to change the code to let the teachers be, letting them empower them, letting them have more decision-making, letting them have more control, and as we already mentioned, making certain that their health care is provided for, and those services are also part of the, package to recruit them and keep them here. In addition to those things, there are some things that we are not going to be able to change. It costs more to live in Loudoun and in Washington County, Maryland, and in Frederick County, Maryland. So they pay more, but they pay more taxes. I don't want to raise taxes. I don't want that to be the option because people come here to West Virginia for the lower taxes, and it is part and parcel of what makes this a great place to live for all of us. So what can we do to make it more attractive that they come here and stay here and work here? Well, part of it is the lower cost that we provide, and also giving them the opportunity to teach in a school system that is smaller, that is going to let them innovate, that is going to empower them. Those are things that I definitely want to push for. And I can tell you, as a teacher who was in the classroom, one of the greatest parts about teaching, it wasn't the cost that drove me to teaching. It was the opportunity to see those kids learn and grow, having the opportunity to see that light bulb go off. We cannot ever thank our teachers enough for everything that they do, and they have a really hard job. So any way we can support and help them, I'm definitely open to. And they know that in me, they can call me, they can email me. I've always responded, and I definitely love all of the suggestions and ideas.
Well, that will conclude Category 1. Our topic was education. We gave a lot of love to the teachers and school personnel, and I appreciate your commitment, both of you, for that. We're going to take a small break here to hear a word from our sponsors, but we will be back with Category 2, where we're going to talk about jobs and the economy. So please, stay with us.
Hi, I'm Eddie Gokenauer, candidate for Berkeley County Council. Most of you know me as a fireman, a career that I'm very proud of. Currently, I'm the Director of Emergency Management for Berkeley County. I have over 42 years of dedicated public service answering your call. I am very active in our community and served on many local boards. I have the necessary leadership skills to help lead us and a desire for your voice to be heard. I not only want to see our businesses flourish, but I would consider it a privilege to represent the everyday working man and woman, and I'm asking for your vote. Thank you. I'm Eddie Gokenauer, paid for by the candidate.
WVU Medicine Surgery is pleased to announce the addition of several new general surgeons to our expert team, offering a full range of minimally invasive laparoscopic and robotic surgeries and procedures. With 8 surgeons in Martinsburg, Grandson, and Spring Mills, WVU Medicine Surgery provides revolutionary treatments quicker recovery and better outcomes. For more information or to schedule a consultation, visit wvumedicine.org/physicians and select specialty care.
Pete Doherty will put Berkeley and Jefferson County first in the state Senate. Doherty has spent 4 decades fighting for our children, seniors, and veterans while keeping the Eastern Panhandle safe from crime. As your senator, Doherty will fight back against the Charleston establishment, ensure that police have the funding needed to protect our communities, repair our crumbling infrastructure and high-speed internet, and be a champion for public education. On November 3rd, let's tell Charleston there's a new sheriff in town. Vote Pete Doherty for state senate.
When it comes to breast cancer, early detection is the key to saving lives. The first 4 Saturdays in October, WVU Medicine is offering 3D mammogram screening clinics to women 40 and older at our women's imaging centers in Ranson and Spring Mills for just $60. This discounted fee is designed to help patients who haven't met their deductible, whose insurance doesn't include a mammogram with an annual exam, or for those with no insurance. Schedule your 3D mammogram with WVU Medicine today by calling 1-888-802-2734, option 2.
Who is the best choice for Sheriff of Berkeley County? That's Curtis Keller. In just 4 years as your sheriff, Curtis has worked hard to improve the Sheriff's Department, and here are the results. New handguns, new tasers, new vehicles, new ballistic vests, body cameras, and a live scan fingerprinting system. All this on top of a much-needed pay raise for the deputies. The best choice for Sheriff of Berkeley County? That's Curtis Keller. Paid for by candidate. This November, be a part of change and help elect Tony Petrucci to the Berkeley County Council.
With my experience and conservative background, I feel I can serve the people well. I have maintained a very conservative and practical approach to handle the county. To put it plainly, I want the county to be prosperous and its citizens healthy and safe.
Tony's first term was described as leaving behind a reputation of fairness and fiscal responsibility. And when you vote Petrucci, you're voting for fiscal responsibility, health and safety, citizen involvement, and economic growth. This November, vote Tony Petrucci. Paid for by candidate.
In the face of adversity, we stand together. Unity for what matters most. We've survived war, fought disaster, and beaten hardships. Jefferson Security Bank. Building community. Member FDIC.
Our dad taught us a lot about the law, but he taught us even more about life and people.
He taught us to treat clients like family. At the Skinner Law Firm, the firm our father started here in the Eastern Panhandle, we still believe that.
We also believe that everyone has the right to be protected from those who don't play by the rules.
We believe it's about helping people. Call us at the Skinner Law Firm, where we treat you like family.
Welcome back to the second part of our debate with Senator Patricia Rucker and Sheriff Doherty, candidates, Republican and Democratic candidates for the 16th Senatorial District. Some people have asked why we chose to highlight this race at the Institute. First of all, we are committed to our local community at the Institute, despite the fact we do a lot of national things as well. We chose these two races because of, I think, frankly, their importance. This is a very important state Senate race that I think it's a close race, and I think a lot lot of eyeballs and a lot of interest around the state are on this campaign, and so it was chosen because I think of its importance. We're going to go to our second category, jobs and the economy. 6 years ago, the Republicans captured majority control of the state legislature, promising to rebuild the state's economy. Senator Rucker, you have been in the legislature for 4 of those 6 years, so I'll ask you, what can you point to suggest West Virginia is doing better economically? And Sheriff Doherty, what can you point to that suggests West Virginians are not doing better with Republican leadership? Senator Rucker, we'll start with you.
Thank you. In 2014, when the West Virginia legislature changed hands in leadership, because the voters decided to change the leadership with their votes, I have to tell you, we inherited an economy that was sluggish at the best. 49% of the population actually working, a lot of the population without hope. And I think that's one of the things that just it's been the hardest to try to overcome, to instill hope in our citizens. Since I have been in there, we have really pushed to remove the regulations and the hurdles that were keeping businesses from coming, tried to fight against those impediments and encourage businesses to invest. We have really pushed for reform, and especially when it comes to registering your business. I am very grateful to have supported the one-stop business shop that we created with our new Secretary of State, so that it is much easier for a business to register, to actually start up here in the state of West Virginia. We have passed legislation to enhance entrepreneurship, and especially among young people and veterans, and trying to help get some of those folks who have been struggling, to giving them a hand up so that it's easier for them. We have also pushed for creating more job opportunities beyond just your typical, business or restaurant. I pushed for agritourism bill, trying to help our farmers make more of a go with their farms so that they can keep their farms and their farms can thrive. Tried to help the tourism industry, which is very important here in West Virginia, and we have passed a lot of legislation. We've actually put more money into tourism than almost any other state in the last few years, and that's something that is very important and helps us, especially here in the Eastern Panhandle. And of course, as you know, I've passed several bills. There's a historic tax credit to try to renovate areas that have historic buildings, and let's use them. And in addition to that, the historic district development that we passed just this past year. In terms of getting folks into good-paying jobs, the Republicans passed Senate Bill 1, which created the West Virginia Invest program that will help put in the funding to help every West Virginian to go to a community college or vocational school or an apprenticeship and get skills directly related to this, what we need in West Virginia. So matching up the needs with the students and helping them get that training that they need so they can get that job. We, of course, are pushing other things that are not directly related to a job. For example, we passed a bill to allow dental coverage for adults on Medicaid. You think, why am I mentioning that when we're talking about jobs? Well, your appearance, your health affects your ability to work. So that was one of the things that I was happy to support. We also have been helping to provide more workforce training. We have offices that have opened up all over the state that provide training and helps folks to get maybe just a little bit of additional help that they need to find a good job. And I will tell you, I could go on and on and on, because our record shows it's been successful. In 2019, we had the fastest growing economy in the United States. That is huge from where it was. We are trying to get more people into more jobs, get them the skills that they need, make West Virginia a great place to live, grow, and take care of your family.
Sheriff Doherty, again, the question is, what can you point to that suggests West Virginians are not doing better under Republican leadership as it pertains to jobs in the economy?
Well, I think what has been discussed so far has been good intention, but I'm not sure that there's real good, hard facts and information that backs it up. The people I talk to across the state of West Virginia do not feel like we have done a very good job, that we are moving into a future economy. We have got to stop doing things to support the past of West Virginia. West Virginia has a proud past of working with the extraction industries, working with sand and glass and coal and oil and so on. But that's not the long-term future for West Virginia. We have got to get into more of the green jobs that are out there. We've got to get into solar. We've got to get more into wind. We've got to get more into small entrepreneurial businesses. I think one of the things that we have not done yet, and we hope to do, and I don't think this is a partisan shot at all. I don't think there's anybody who's in West Virginia who doesn't think we need to do a better job of creating connectivity through the internet. Small businesses, individual employees, and et cetera, are going to benefit if we do a better job in getting that done. We cannot move forward unless we do that, and we've got to address that issue. Infrastructure is also important. In our part of the state, we are considered by most to be in good condition, but our infrastructure is lousy. If you're on Route 81 in Martinsburg, in Berkeley County, and you look at Interstate 81, what you probably are looking at is barrels that are probably going to deteriorate before we get that road improved. And that's only one issue that should have been addressed years ago that still hasn't been addressed. And once we get to that point, we are going to be faced with what do we do with all these small secondary roads. If you're on Route 11, if you're on Route 51, if you're on Route 9, a lot of these roads, Flowing Springs Road in Jefferson County, you're 45, 480, those roads are really not designed to take the future level of transportation. If I'm interested in coming here and starting a business and working here, I've got to have the ability to work. I've got to have the ability to move and be transported, and we don't have that yet in place. And I don't see a real plan in place. I mean, I hear a lot of things that we're going to be doing, but I heard that 4 years ago, and I heard it 6 years ago, and I'm hearing it again this year. What I'm more interested in, as I've tried to do in my lifetime, is you look at a problem, you try to find a way to solve the problem, and you work at it. And one of the problems that I have with our legislature is, we passed a road to prosperity. That was going to supposedly take care of all the significant road needs that we had. We get COVID funding from the federal government, and what's the governor proposed to do? Take $100 million to fix potholes so people can get to their health care provider. Yet at the same time, what are we talking about? Most health care providers are doing their work remotely. And you're not going to fix potholes and do that kind of stuff real quickly. We've got to start looking to the future of West Virginia, not the past, and we need to make sure that when we invest in projects that there's a long-term financial gain for both the people who live here as well for employment purposes and for the state and local government for revenue.
So I'm going to have to pivot here for a moment because actually in your answer you took sort of my next three questions, and which is fine, by the way, because I can go with this discussion. The pivot is to infrastructure, actually. So since you had an opportunity to make a comment on infrastructure, including roads and broadband, all of that in infrastructure, let me go to Senator Rucker now with your thoughts. You can counter what he said or dispute that, or you can talk about what you're doing with infrastructure, and then Sheriff, I'll come back to you on the same topic. Is that okay?
Fine.
All right, Senator Rucker.
Well, I'm grateful that my opponent acknowledges the road to prosperities. In the last 4 years, we have invested more in our roads than any of the previous last 20 years, and we are working on taking what was pretty much ignored for many, many years and trying to bring it up to par. And roads is something that is very important. But in terms of infrastructure, we have already mentioned a little bit about broadband and how important it is to our future. This COVID pandemic has made it even clearer than what it already was, how important it is. And the Republican-led legislature has passed bills every single year, removing the hurdles that had been put in place to create a monopoly in the state of West Virginia so that we could actually have expansion, choice, facilities built. We have taken and made ways and pathways for utilities to work together. So when they're laying new road, they are putting a pipe in line so that there could be future fiber optic cables. Even if it's not now, they can put it in later without re-tearing up that road. There has been a Broadband Enhancement Council that was created, and we have a whole section of our Department of Commerce whose goal is to find the places that still need internet and get that solved. And just yesterday, as I know we mentioned, our governor and the Republican leadership did make an announcement, huge announcement, $1 billion in investment in West Virginia to get an option for internet everywhere around the state. It's a huge investment and a huge commitment, and I'm grateful that we are able to do that. And part of the reason we're able to do that is because we've grown our economy, because the things that we have done has put us in a position where we're not talking about cuts, we're talking about investment, and that's what needs to happen. And I have to tell you, infrastructure is part and parcel of what makes West Virginia a good place to have your business and a good place to live.
Sheriff Doherty, your comments?
Well, there are a couple of things that I'd like to say in response to that. One is the Broadband Council that is being discussed has already concluded that we in the Eastern Panhandle in Berkeley and Jefferson County are really at the top of the state as far as having significant access. So if you're going to start approaching this at a state level, you better have some people at the local level who are really going to fight like the devil, because everybody I know in Berkeley and Jefferson County do not think we are in good condition to deal with it. The other is that what is being proposed is still going to require a lot of work by the legislature in order to make it happen. And let's talk about infrastructure, because, you know, it's nice to say what we're hearing a lot of is the great intention and what the hope is. And I worked in the legislative branch for 11 years, and I've worked in the executive branch of government. And the frustration I always had with the legislative branch is they'd pass a bill and say the problem was solved. And in the executive branch, you found that you didn't have the problem solved. That was the start of getting the problem solved. And so while the intention may be good, what you have to do is make sure it's executed upon. And one of the things that I've been critical of and will continue to be critical of is this legislature does not do a good job in following up with the legislation and what they say they want to have done to get done. If people are trying to tell me and tell the people in this community and across the state that the Roads to Prosperity has solved our transportation issue, which is what it was told it was going to do, I don't see it, and I don't think the people in West Virginia see it. So what you need is you need a senator who will simply stand up and say, we're making some progress, but you can depend that I am going to be there to pound every day to make sure that we not only get our fair share, but in retrospect, you have to look and say, we are the place that has the best economic opportunities in the state. We ought to get more than our share because we ought to be investing more here, because we will bring more revenue into the state, more tax dollars, more tourism, more revenue that is needed to operate the state.
I only have 8 more minutes left in this debate, and I had promised 3 broad categories, but the two of you each like to go into some depth on your answers, which is fine, and I'm a terrible timekeeper, so that's why we end up with this situation. So this third category is probably going to get some short shrift, I would think, because there's so much we could talk about under the umbrella of health care. Heck, we could probably go on about jobs and economy as well, but we only gave this debate 1 hour. I want to ask this as it relates to health care, because it's something that has been on all of our minds for an awfully long time, but somehow during this pandemic it seems to maybe have taken a back seat when it comes to our attention, and that's the general topic of the drug crisis in West Virginia. West Virginia is in the midst of a crisis still, despite the pandemic, and this addiction keeps West Virginia at the top of a very bad list as it relates to states around the country. As a senator, what are your intentions to fight drug addiction, especially with our young people? Sheriff Doherty, I'll start with you, and then I'll go to Senator Rucker.
I'm glad you asked me that question, because I probably have as much experience as anybody in doing this. Not only have I been a sheriff, and my office has worked within the federal task force. Yesterday I was at a press conference the U.S. Attorney was conducting, where a ring that had been operating out of Philadelphia bringing drugs into the Eastern Panhandle brought enough fentanyl in to kill everybody in the state of West Virginia 2.5 times. So the first thing we have to do is we have to increase our law enforcement presence to stop illegal drugs from coming in, because it is literally killing our people here. Last year we had 270 overdoses in Jefferson County alone and 11 overdose deaths. But the more important part about that is I'm also on the Criminal Justice Board in Jefferson County and been involved in a number of activities that work on the back end of that. And that is, how do you take the people who are addicted? Because just stopping drug dealers from coming in, if there's somebody ready to buy drugs, you're not going to solve the problem. You have to deal on the back end. And I would say that the Jefferson County Criminal Justice Board, which I've served on since it started, has been very, very effective, because it not only is a Medicare or Medicaid producer, we are doing telehealth in that. We can get psychiatric care for people who need it within minutes in an hour, versus in the regular system maybe days or weeks or months. And we have also been using a product called Vivitrol, which is an opioid arrestor, and we have really had great success, and people are able to go back to work or maintain their job and do that. And that's what we have to do. We have to address it on both sides. We have to do it on the side of interdiction, stopping it from coming in. We have to do it on the other side to do that. But let me just point out one thing with that as well. I've been involved in the justice system for a long, long time. When I was a magistrate many years ago, we had as many as 15 state troopers in Jefferson County. In the last couple of years, we've had 5 and 6, even though the population's increased. That is not the way to help us solve the front end of the problem.
Senator Rucker, the topic is the drug crisis in West Virginia.
Yes, thank you. This is something that, again, we inherited when I walked into office. It was a raging fire, and we have had to pass legislation to help address all of the different things that have been going on. As my opponent mentioned, legalizing the use of Vivitrol, making it more accessible, passing legislation so that our first responders had Narcan, creating a place in the Eastern Panhandle where folks can get rehab, which didn't exist before, changing the laws to disincentivize the use of opioids and incentivize insurance companies to actually provide other alternative treatments, so that folks were not necessarily just given drugs to deal with pain, but have access now to chiropractic care, physical therapy, and other alternative options. We have pushed for more mental and social supports and help for families, and one of the things I've been able to have a firsthand in as chair of Children and Families Interim Committee is the foster care crisis, which exploded because of the drug issue, and push for reform in foster care, push for an ombudsman. Foster care Bill of Rights got passed just this last year, trying to get wraparound services so that families that are in crisis, we can give a hand. And my opponent mentioned about grandparents, how a lot of grandparents are raising their kids nowadays, and that is because of the drug issue primarily. So trying to get support to those parents and grandparents to try to help them. It's a issue that is affecting so many lives in West Virginia, and as a mother myself, I mean, whatever we need to do, because it is taking us of, workforce that we need. It is really, I think, due to a lot of hopelessness. And that's one of the reasons for why you can't just throw money at the problem. You really have to address it as a community and as a society. My fellow senator, he has a program where he's trying to help folks in recovery. We passed second chance legislation for those who have recovered and overcome their addiction so that they can have future employment. But it's just so many things, and we need to become more proactive. Of course, as Senate Education Chair, we've been trying to push for better education to prevent the use of drugs in the first place, and pass programs allowing faith-based initiatives in the schools, just anything we can do to help solve this issue.
That's going to end our question part. I'm going to give you each 2 minutes, and I'm going to try and enforce this, by the way, because we do need to wrap up. So if we can try to keep it to a couple minutes. I've got my little stopwatch on here. I don't want to have to interrupt you because I hate it when that happens, but I might do it if I need to. Sheriff Doherty, I'm going to go to you first for your closing statement, and we'll end with Senator Rucker.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to be here today and appreciate the opportunity to sort of talk to the public. For those of you that don't know me, I have the experience that I think you want and need in a senator. I have the dedication to continue to serve, and I have a record of public service that is pretty rare in this state. I know about education. I know about law enforcement. I have the support of all law enforcement agencies or organizations that are there. The sheriffs, the deputy sheriffs, the State Troopers Association have all supported me. I'm prepared to deal with this. I have had the experience in leading 3 state level groups. I was the president of the West Virginia Magistrates Association, the West Virginia School Boards Association. I chaired the Professional Teaching Standards Commission, and I'm currently the president of the County Officials Association. So I know a wide variety of topics and problems that we face. But I think most importantly is if you look at my record, and I encourage you to do that, and I encourage you to go back and look at who's coming out and supporting me. It's not just Democrats, and it's not just independents. It is Republicans, Democrats, and independents. It is groups that go across the board. It is both organized labor people, but it's really the tens of thousands of people who belong, who work every day, work hard for the people of West Virginia. I've been endorsed by the Senior Citizen Center directors. I have a host of environmental groups who have supported me. Why? Because I want to make sure that not only this year, but 20 years from now and 50 years from now, people look back and say, in 2021, what was the legislature doing? And I want it to be that we weren't selling us out and ruining our economy. We were going forward. So I would encourage you to, doctors have also endorsed me. I would encourage you to look at my record, my experience, and I think you will conclude that you have a person who not only has the experience working the legislative branch, but has the experience of dealing with virtually every kind of problem you as a citizen face and have practical solutions on how to solve it. And I just want to point out one thing, because I always get people in my party always get attacked at being liberals and big spenders and so on. I think if you go back and you will check, you will find that I am the only local official who actually has turned back positions. So not only have I brought millions of dollars of contract and grant funding into my office, but I'm also the only person that I know of locally who has actually reduced 3 positions in the offices that I control, which has saved money. And my efforts have really led to cutting the jail bill by over $750,000 as well.
Thank you, Sheriff. Senator Rucker, you may have 3 minutes to close.
One of the main themes of my campaign is promises made, promises kept. One thing about me, you will know where I stand on issues. I campaigned on education reform, and even with a lot of opposition and special interest groups opposing me, we got education reform, we got locality pay, we got higher wages for our teachers, and we got school choice. I campaigned to create more opportunities locally, and we have gotten those things done, passing an agritourism bill, passing legislation that helps small business entrepreneurs, helping businesses across the board. I campaign on not raising your taxes and have never voted for a tax increase ever. There are over 80 pieces of legislation that I passed, that I sponsored, and are now into law, and most of them with significant bipartisan support. I am someone who does what she says and says what she does. I am always accessible to you, my constituents. I answer your emails and your phone calls, and I read every single one that is sent to me. I care about what you think, and I care about you. It has been a humbling experience to serve as your senator. I'm sometimes overwhelmed by the responsibility, but it is such a pleasure and an honor. I try to respond to everyone who reaches out to me. We have a clear record that we have shown where West Virginia has been moving in the right track. And before the COVID pandemic, we were the fastest growing economy in the United States, and we do need to get back there. Every single one of us deserves a chance. I fight for that. I fight for Shepherd College here in the Eastern Panhandle and for Blue Ridge Community College. I fight so that everyone has access to a good education. I'm fighting to improve your healthcare options and choices. We are going to improve broadband in this state, all across the state. And I am there for you. I ask for your support one more time and ask for your vote.
Thank you, Senator Rucker. And that will do it. Thank you, Sheriff Doherty and Senator Rucker, for participating in this debate, and we really do wish you both the very best in these next 2 weeks. We really want to thank you, our viewers, for tuning in. So many voters trying to make up their mind in this important race, and we hope that this debate has helped you. This will conclude our first debate of our double header this evening, but we ask you to stay tuned. We will be back in a few minutes with our second debate for Secretary of State between Secretary Mac Warner and former Secretary Natalie Tennant. Please stay with us.
Rockwool is one of the world's leading manufacturers of stone wool insulation, and we're hiring people like you to join our team in Ranson, West Virginia. All Rockwool employees receive a competitive base salary, plus excellent benefits including health, dental, and vision coverage for employees and their families, paid time off, a 401k matched up to 6% by Rockwool, and more. This is Sam, a supervisor at Rockwool, on his benefits.
The benefits are important to me. I have a teenage son, just the dental, the vision, he needs glasses, medication, stuff like that. I find the benefits packages help me out greatly over the years.
If you want a well-paying job and the potential for a rewarding career, visit rockwooljobs.com/radio for information on all current job openings. Apply now at rockwooljobs.com/radio.
Rumors are flying. There's this big merger everyone is talking about. Two real forces in the world joining forces. This is big stuff, but it's all rumor. Is this merger really going to happen? If so, when? Where? Who else is involved? Mergers of this stature affect a lot of people. At Bechtel Jewelers, we say, sir, it's time to confirm the rumors. This is Lori from Bechtel Jewelers. It's true. People are talking about you and that woman you're so crazy about. It's so obvious to everybody that you're meant for each other. And yes, talk about two forces in the world. You, her, watch out, world. So get in here. Let's find the diamond and the setting. Just perfect for her. Just what she's dreamed of. Then get back to her pronto. Down on one knee, open that little box, say those few words. She'll probably say more than a few back. Of course, when she sees her diamond, she might not be able to say anything at all, except the one word that confirms that beautiful merger. And then spread the news. Confirm the rumors. This merger is happening. Bechtel Jewelers, Route 11 South in Inwood.
Find them online at BechtelJewelers.com.
WVU Medicine Surgery is pleased to announce the addition of several new general surgeons to our expert team, offering a full range of minimally invasive laparoscopic and robotic surgeries and procedures. With 8 surgeons in Martinsburg, Granson, and Spring Mills, WVU Medicine Surgery provides revolutionary treatments, quicker recovery, and better outcomes. For more information or to schedule a consultation, visit wvumedicine.org/physicians and select specialty care.
To the citizens of Berkeley County, my name is Nate Harmon, your choice as Republican candidate for Berkeley County Sheriff. When you chose me, you made a statement. You stated that you were tired of the inactive good old boy mentality, the knee-jerk reactions that infringe on our constitutional rights, and watching our deputies' morale and welfare deteriorate. I will be the staunch reminder to government that their powers reside in all citizens of our state and can only be rightfully exercised in accordance with the will of the people. Let's finish the race. Stand by me, Nate Harmon, as your next Berkeley County Sheriff, so your voice is heard and results are seen.
Paid for by candidate.
John Perdue never dreamed he'd go to college, let alone become one of the best state treasurers. John Perdue brought back financial integrity and transparency to the treasurer's office. He created the highly successful Smart 529 College Savings Program, and under his watch has returned more than $230 million in unclaimed property. He's created the 457 Retirement Program and WV Able, and his Board of Treasury Investments has the highest rating from Standard & Poor's.
I'm John Perdue, and I've never forgotten that I worked for you.
Hi, I'm Sally Hardy. I am asking you to re-elect John Hardy to the West Virginia House. John is my husband of 24 years and an amazing dad to our daughters. I am proud of this hardworking man who runs a successful business, gives back to the community, and is our valuable delegate in the 63rd. John Hardy is a man of values with a heart of service, and he cares about moving West Virginia forward. Re-elect my husband, John Hardy. Visit Delegate John Hardy on Facebook.
Paid for by candidate.
Hello, I am Chuck Hurst, Republican candidate for House District 62. I've lived in the area for over 40 years and raised my family here. I'm a liberty-minded candidate, and I believe that less government is better. As the pro-business candidate, I know that we need to create a better business environment, which will create better-paying jobs and expand our tax base without raising taxes. I'm pro-Second Amendment, pro-life, and endorsed by the WVCDL, the NRA, and West Virginians for Life. I'm Chuck Hurst, and I humbly ask for your vote this election day.
Paid for by candidate.
We all know what a good time looks like, but what is it made of? We can think of a few things. In this case, it's handcrafted food to gather around, an ever-changing variety of wine, and a Friday night. Do yourself a favor. Experience the good in a good time.
West Virginia's not like other places. We still know right from wrong, and people here help each other. That's why so many people in State Senate District 16 are voting against Patricia Rucker. As state senator, Rucker was the deciding vote to cut pre-K through 12 education funding by almost $80 million. Cutting schools, that hurts children, parents, teachers. Rucker's plan would have forced counties to raise your property taxes. And it gets worse. Rucker voted to give special rate cuts on electricity to corporations, which would have forced families, seniors, and small businesses to pay more. That's Patricia Rucker. Sweetheart deals for corporations, but higher taxes and bigger electric bills for you. So whether you vote early, or by mail, or on Election Day, vote against the politicians who vote against you. Vote against Patricia Rucker. Paid for by Mountain State Values, not authorized by any candidate or candidates committee.
Remember when you were a little kid and saw your first deer?
Oh, how cute.
As an adult, maybe you've had a different experience.
Where'd that come from?
Bambi mess up your dream machine? Call Cody's Auto Body today at 304-901-4777 and get the work done right the first time. Cody's Auto Body, 851 Wilston Street in Martinsburg, has a team of auto body professionals with a lifetime of experience putting your ride back together again, regardless of how it got that way. Cody's Auto Body.
Orsini's, not just an appliance store anymore. They're your one-stop resource for all home needs, whether it's custom kitchen design, countertops, or cabinets, or check out their new sleep studio with Tempur-Pedic, Sealy, and Stearns & Foster. For all of your outdoor living needs, Orsini's has Gladiator Garage Works, Traeger grills, barbecue accessories, barbecue rubs and sauces, and every flavor wood pellets. Visit their brand new 8,200 square foot showroom at 360 Hack Wilson Way, 304-267-7251, Orsinis.com.
At Valley Health, we know everyone's schedule is different.
That's why our urgent care centers offer convenient features like online check-in and telehealth virtual visits, allowing you to see one of our expert caregivers in person or right from the comfort of your device. So whatever your calendar, agenda, or life looks like these days, you can be sure that if it works for you, it works for us. Find one of our 8 area locations at vhurgentcare.com.
This is Eric from Hagerstown Ford. I want to thank you for your continued support of helping Hagerstown Ford's efforts to be #1 in the region. As we get closer to this extremely aggressive goal, I want to recap why Hagerstown Ford should be your only consideration when buying your next vehicle. Number 1, we have the best prices from Winchester, Virginia to Washington, D.C., from Hershey, Pennsylvania to Baltimore, Maryland. I assure you, price will not be the reason you don't buy from Hagerstown Ford. Number 2, we have a real return policy that's better than Walmart. Seriously, if you don't like it, return it. We'll give you 3 days to make sure you love your new ride. And finally, we'll bring your new car, truck, or SUV to you, just like Amazon does. Never step foot in a dealership again. Stop the silly back and forth negotiations that make everyone crazy. It's dumb, and it's a total waste of time. Besides, we hate it worse than you do. Simply log on to HagerstownFord.com and let us make your next buying process fun, easy, and risk-free. What do you got to lose? Visit HagerstownFord.com and let us cater to you. See dealer for details.
I'm Natalie Tennant. As West Virginians, we'll get through this crisis together. We've been knocked down before, and we get back up. I've been there with you, and I'll be there again working for a better future like I did as Secretary of State. By modernizing the office, I saved you money and gave it back, lowered fees and helped businesses create jobs, and made voting easier. We need that kind of leadership again. It takes courage, vision, and cooperation. I know we can do this, West Virginia. I believe in you.
Hi, I'm Eddie Gokenauer, candidate for Berkeley County Council. Most of you know me as a fireman, a career that I'm very proud of. Currently, I'm the Director of Emergency Management for Berkeley County. I have over 42 years of dedicated public service answering your call. I am very active in our community and served on many local boards. I have the necessary leadership skills to help lead us and a desire for your voice to be heard. I not only want to see our businesses flourish, but I would consider it a privilege to represent the everyday working man and woman, and I'm asking for your vote. Thank you. I'm Eddie Gokenauer, paid for by the candidate.
Ever try to collect on an insurance claim? Perhaps a homeowner's claim, auto accident, or fire. Insurance companies collect money from you for protection should something bad happen. And when it does, they don't want to pay, or they offer too little. At Mansion Ferretti, we have an attorney who worked defending insurance companies and knows all the dirty tricks they play to deny or lowball your claim. Call us today for help in getting what you really deserve. Mansion Ferretti, when you need justice.
To the second half of our debate doubleheader, presented by the Stubblefield Institute for Civil Political Communications, WRNR Radio, and Martinsburg TV 10. This time featuring the Republican and Democratic candidates for West Virginia's Secretary of State, Mac Warner and Natalie Tennant. I'm your moderator, David Welch. This debate will be divided into 3 broad categories. The first is voter confidence, ballot security, and voting by mail. The second category is focused on improving the operations of the Office of the Secretary of State. And the third category is the role of the Secretary of State in helping small businesses and the economy. The rules are as follows. You will each be given 2 minutes to speak, whether you're speaking first on the topic or rebutting your opponent. However, as the moderator, I reserve the privilege of being able to extend a topic at any given time and to encourage discussion. And you'll just have to trust me on the decisions that I would make. I would like to remind you both that the Stubblefield Institute and those of the community that supports us place great emphasis on civility and constructive debate. Category 1, voter confidence, ballot security, and voting by mail. It is the Secretary of State's highest priority to make sure that the people of West Virginia have confidence in our electoral process, especially when it comes to fair elections and voter confidence. I want to hear what you have done, each of you have done, and what you would do in the future to make sure that we have clean, undisputed elections. Secretary Warner, you may go first and take up to 2 minutes. Secretary Tennant, you will have equal time to also answer the question.
Thank you, David, for that, and thanks to the Stubblefield Institute for putting on this debate. Thanks to Ms. Tennant for being here. To make sure that people have confidence in the election, that is the utmost importance to the Secretary of State's office. What I have done is I've communicated. I've communicated with the county clerks. I've restored the relationship with the county clerks. I've communicated with the governor, the attorney general, other state agencies, and then I've communicated with the voters. And so it's that constant communication that was drilled into me from early on, from my military background, from my State Department background, is that constant communication. And another partner that we've did not mention, and that is the Department of Homeland Security and the other three-lettered agencies at the national level. So it's from the communication with all of those entities that allows me to put together with a first-rate team, staff, elections division within the Secretary of State's office to put together a plan to adapt to situations such as the COVID-19 pandemic has presented us. And so that is a plan that, one, allows people to vote by absentee ballot using the mail, and then it's also to ensure that the PPE, the personal protective equipment, is all first ordered, gathered, distributed, and then properly used. And you do that by training the poll workers through the clerks, and to make sure that those practices are enacted on Election Day and during early voting. We are well positioned for this upcoming general election. We had 0 cases of COVID-19 during the primary. We had perhaps the best primary throughout the whole United States when it comes to health and safety during our primary, and I intend that will happen again during the general. Thank you.
Thank you, Secretary. Secretary Tenet, your turn.
Thank you, David, and thank you for having this, and thank you, Mac, for being here, too. And thank you, everyone, for tuning in and taking a little extra time. Well, when we talk about confidence in elections, it's, we talk about what we bring to the process and what we're able to show and make sure you build confidence in what voters have. Well, here's what I've done as Secretary of State. I am the Secretary of State that probably has done more in advances for voter registration than any other secretary. And that starts from the beginning. That's the first thing that you would do as a voter, and that helps to build confidence. I implemented online voter registration in 2015, and that was a hard push because there were a lot of folks who didn't think that we should do this, who didn't want something done online like this. Well, 5 years later, thank goodness we did it, because that's what we're using a whole lot of during this COVID election of 2020, as I call it. I also worked with Republicans and Democrats to pass automatic voter registration back in 2016. But you know, when you go to the DMV, it's not working, it's not there, because the current secretary has refused to implement it and keeps asking for delays and blames that on the legislature. But that is part of voter confidence, the ease in being able to get registered to vote. I brought to West Virginia the Electronic Registration Information Center, which helps the county clerks be able to keep the voter rolls clean and match up and see who should not be on the ballot or who should not be on the rolls and who should be. So I've helped with that. And the ballot tracking that we are using so much of, we started that in 2011, and that helps to give confidence to a voter during this time now when so many folks are using the absentee ballot process. So you can go online to track your ballot, see if they received it, if it's coming back to you, and where it is when you sent it. So that's how I built voter confidence, by putting in advances that would make it easier and break down barriers for West Virginians. Now, what will I do in the future and what needs to be done? When we talk about voter confidence, especially in this 2020 election, consistency is what you strive for as an election administrator. And we all agree that the primary election went well when absentee applications were sent out to the voters. And 250,000 people used that and used the applications and the ballots and sent them back. Well, that's what we should have been doing for the general election. You can't change it in midstream. That's what hurts people's confidence. And I have seen more and more people who are like, what do I do, Natalie? Should I go to the polls? Should I send it in? Well, we shouldn't have to force voters to choose between their health and their right to vote. And the application should have been sent as it was in the primary. This current secretary pulled the rug out from underneath the voters, and there were county clerks who even went against his judgment because they knew their voters deserved to have the applications. And that's what I would have done and sent that out. I would have done some more innovative ideas that really are being used around the country, like drop boxes. It makes it a whole lot easier for voters to be able to have that security. It makes it easier for the clerks. It makes it easier on the postal service as well. So there's a lot of initiatives that I brought. There's a lot of initiatives that I'll continue to bring to boost that voter confidence in West Virginia.
Well, I promised I would exercise the privilege of being able to extend a topic, and because my next question was actually going to get into the controversy and the disagreement that both of you have on mail ballots in general, I thought I'd just stay on this. During this pandemic period, and because of the virus, it has been used as a reason, really, to expand and to debate the whole idea of mail-in balloting. I'll turn to you, Senator Warner, because you did implement a plan in the primary that effectively dealt with this problem. Secretary Tennant is now essentially saying, if I understand correctly, you should have stayed with that plan for the general election. I'd like your comment on that.
Well, first I'd like to express my appreciation that my opponent has recognized what a great job we did during the primary. But one of the major differences between my opponent and me is our fidelity to the law. I will always follow the law, and the law is clear in the West Virginia Code, and you can't just implement something because it sounds good or it's being used in another state. Perhaps their laws allow a drop box or ballot harvesting and those sorts of things. West Virginia law does not. So to try to implement those sort of things right in the middle of an election is not only unlawful, but it's unsound. And so what my opponent has failed to do in her tenure as Secretary of State was to do the list maintenance as required by federal law. Every 2 years you're supposed to clean up those lists. And what it did is it caused the county clerks to come to me and say, not only run, but when you do so, let's work together collaboratively to clean up the voter lists. And so in doing so, over the last 44 months, together with the county clerks, we have taken off 195,000 names, not people, but names from the voter lists. And so what that will do is, one, it eliminates those opportunities for fraud to occur, and it reduces the database against which we measure how many people turn out to vote and so on. So you're going to have clean lists, you're going to have better election results and so forth. So with regards to the applications, again, the clerks came to me and said, do not send those applications out. They expressed many opportunities where the applications were illegible, that people left off key fields, and it took an enormous amount of time. 225,000 people voted absentee in West Virginia, and every one of those applications had to be hand-entered into a database. So that's why we implemented an electronic portal for this general election. It is working fabulously well. Over 55,000 people have already used that electronic portal, and what it does is it allows people to put in their application on one day, and the next day the label is being put on the ballot and being sent out the door. 99% of the people who have applied through that portal have already received their ballot. So it's working extremely well. Just because you win one time doesn't mean you use the same game plan the second time around. When you listen to the clerks and they tell you to change the game, that's exactly what I did by listening to the clerks. Thank you.
Secretary Tennant, did you want to respond to that, or do you want me to move on?
May I?
Can you make it brief?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. First off, when he says that 100% of the clerks came and said don't send them out, that just doesn't make sense. He cannot continue making that talking point because we know 3 counties have sent them out themselves. Lincoln, Ohio, and even Monongalia County went a unique way to send out the application. So that's not the case. And had he abided by and continued to abide by what the CARES Act calls for, he would be reimbursing those counties. That's part of the problem. They went against his judgment. He took his ball home and went running home with it and won't reimburse it. And that is a question that should be asked. Will you reimburse these counties for sending out these applications because they went against your will? So that's one question that should be asked. As far as, a state of emergency, we certainly are changing a lot of the election rules taking place right now. How the heck are people getting to vote by absentee by using COVID? He changed the rules because of the state of the emergency and emergency rules. The same could have been done for the drop boxes. And I would just like him to acknowledge at some point, when we talk about cleaning up these voter rolls, this ERIC system that I talk about, Electronic Registration Information Center, I knew and I know what was going on when it comes to the voter rolls. I put that in place in 2016, and he was a huge critic of it. Now he takes credit for it. So those are things that we have to be able to break through here. And I just want to point out some of those things. You listen to the voter Who are we supposed to be listening to here? The voters wanted the application sent to them. The voters want drop boxes. That's who we should be listening to and using our expertise as an administrator to be able to get that done.
Secretary Warner, we're going to stay on this issue of mail-in ballots because I still think there's kind of more to discuss here. Because I'm still trying to get to the heart of the disagreement. Is it as simple as Natalie Tennant wanting to expand and go to a Oregon-type system of voting by mail and you don't? Your comment on that. Is that how you read that?
Well, she has advocated universal vote by mail, and that is what the Oregon and Washington State...
Can you tell me why you would oppose that then?
Because the gold standard across the globe is voting in person. That is the surest way to vote. You have trained poll workers from both parties overseeing it. If there are any questions or issues, it can be handled right at that time. You get to see the ballot before you put it in the ballot box, or you're walking over with that trained poll worker to put it in the ballot box. There's no question whether your vote's going to be at the right place to be counted. When you stick that ballot into a mailbox, you don't know whether that's going to arrive at the right place. By the U.S. Postal Service's own admission, by their own reports, their Inspector General reports, 4% of the mail does not arrive on time as scheduled. Now, 96% does, and that's a great average. But think about our system where, again, if we were sending out paper applications, 4% of those wouldn't arrive to the voter on time. 4% of the voter back to the clerk wouldn't arrive on time. When the ballots are sent out from the clerk to the voter, 4% of those wouldn't arrive on time. And when they sent their ballots back in, 4% of those. Think of the multiplication effect in there of how many things can go wrong when you vote using the mail. So in the situation we have with the pandemic, it's important to allow people that option to vote so that they don't have to put their health at risk if they have a legitimate COVID-19 concern. But if not, I highly encourage people to vote in person, whether it's early voting or on Election Day. I will never deviate from that, but we have changed the rules, not the law. That's the key that I wanted to get back to. You just can't change the law by introducing drop boxes and that sort of thing. So I advocate all options, give the voter the option to vote however they feel comfortable.
Secretary Tennant, how would you assure the validity and understandability of the ballots to ensure that the fewest amount of ballots are thrown out in a mail-in system?
You look and you research and you follow what others have done. Do you realize that 33 million Americans voted by mail in 2016? Was there all this talk about it then? No, because it ran smoothly, it successfully. Oregon has had it for 20 years. Washington, Colorado, Utah, and Hawaii, and parts of California. And so that is a mixture of all kinds of states, and we know it's successful, we know it's safe, and there is no universal vote by mail. If the definition of universal vote by mail means that's the only way you get to vote, well, then there is no such thing as that, because even these states that had 33 million Americans voting in them had voting in person, because you still have demographics and parts of voters and groups of voters who still need to go in person, like in West Virginia. If you're a first-time voter and didn't present your identification when you registered, then you have to go in person. So that's a fear and falsehood that he wants to bring up, because he is sending mixed messages. The clerks are out there busting their butts, making sure that this vote by mail is going so well. I just heard Vera McCormick from Kanawha County yesterday talk about how safe it is, and we know that there are several levels. So here he is sending mixed messages that, oh, we want you to go in person. Okay, if you want to go by vote by mail, it's okay. When you send mixed messages, that hurts voter confidence. That causes voter confusion. And voter confusion and lack of confidence is voter suppression. And so it's a shame that the chief election official is trying to dampen down someone's spirit of going to register to vote. Now, here's also what you need to have, and I guess we'll get into this, David, when we talk about maybe operations of the Secretary of State's office, but you have to have vision, too. I mean, recognize what is taking place. We're not going to go back to the way we were with elections prior to the COVID election of 2020. We're going to look at what has taken place with these absentee ballots here. I foresee, even in West Virginia, having no excuse absentee voting after we come out of this and we go and work with the lawmakers to really discuss this. So when you just come along and say, no, we're not going to do this, no, we're not going to do this, what kind of leadership is that? What kind of vision is that? And that's what I say that we do. It's like, look at what we're doing here. Some is going to work well, some's not going to work well. And that's the kind of leader I am, and that's why I'm running again for Secretary of State, to put some of this innovation in place.
There are some voters who still continue to be concerned about elections being interfered with by foreign governments or by people who might wish us ill. It falls into the area of cybersecurity, making sure that our elections remain free and remain free of this type of interference. I'd like for you each to comment on what you might have done in this area and what you would intend to do to make sure that voter confidence is so high that none of us believe that our elections could be interfered with by those who wish us ill. Secretary Warner, we'll start with you.
Well, I'd like just to finish the thought a moment ago. Notice the fuzzy math that's being used, that because 5 states use vote by mail, that means that all 50 states? There are 50 states here, and it's the same math you used with the absentee ballot applications. Because 3 of our 55 counties chose to do that then somehow that makes it wrong. No, that means 52 counties are going with, and even those 3 are using the electronic portal. So let's get our math straight here and make sure that when we talk about vote by mail, and because 5 states do it, they've been at this for 20 years. Talk to Kim Wyman, the Secretary of State, who I just talked to yesterday of Washington State, that talks about it takes 10, 15 years to get the list maintenance that she did not do straightened out, so you're not sending live ballots out to people that no longer exist.
So let me make a pivot on that, because you made a point. I want to give, if you don't mind,
Sure.
I want to give Secretary Tenet also a chance to respond to that, and then if we have time during this first category, we'll come back to cybersecurity and foreign interference.
Sure, I think that's what I was talking about when we were talking about the vision for what the next step is for voting. Yes, 5 states do, or 6 states, we'll say 5.5. But look, all the states are having this change and this whole shift to vote by mail right now during this election. And so I foresee that more states are going to come on board, and West Virginia needs to be ready to come on board. He's automatically saying, no, we're not going to do it. No, we're not going to do it. Well, how can you ever become a 10-year down the road if you're not willing to look and make the small steps and the advances? He's taken us backwards. He didn't even want to take the step forward. So I'd like to say again, every time when he says, I didn't do the list maintenance, he will be the first to say that it's the county clerks. I put more tools in place to make sure that list maintenance was possible for the county clerks. Unfortunately, I didn't get to continue that, but that's why I'm running again, so I can make sure that all this work is being done that he's left behind.
David, I think that what you've just done here is draw out one of the major distinctions between the two of us.
If I may just interject something, sure. Because and I don't know if others are curious about this, but and I sense it now. There are things that Secretary Tenet says that she began during her time in office, and there are things that you said that you've done during your time in office. And I think some people can be confused by who should get, I mean, for lack of a better way of putting it, who should get the credit for it. And I'd like to try and resolve that here if we can.
Is it the person who talks about doing something or the person who accomplishes something?
Well, I mean, if you put a rhetorical question like that, then I suppose that that would be the topic that you'd want to talk about. So go ahead and extend your remarks. I'm going to go back to Secretary Tenet and have her take on that as well.
People talked about flying machines centuries before it happened. Michelangelo and others had drawings and so forth, but who gets the credit for it? Orville and Wilbur Wright. They did it. They put the machine together. It's one thing to talk about AVR, but not automatic voter registration, where you have to opt out. It's like the government knows best. We're going to tell you that you're going to register to vote. And if the equipment isn't in place, the databases, the computer systems, the IT technology is not there, and you just want to flip it on for a political point, a political statement, which is what my opponent has done, and not have the infrastructure in place, you end up with things like what happened in California, where 23,000 people were disenfranchised because the computer systems between DMV and the Secretary of State's office didn't work together. So the names went with the wrong addresses, and then they had to vote provisional ballots and so forth. In Illinois, the AVR passed, but the governor had to veto it because they were allowing illegal aliens or non-citizens to register to vote. That's what would have happened had we simply flipped on the switch that she wanted to do prior to my coming into office. When I came in and realized that the infrastructure wasn't in place, that's when we notified the legislature, and the legislature has properly delayed implementation of AVR until summer of next year. to get the opportunity for DMV to get their database. They were working off a infrastructure that was 25 years old. We all know how fast technology changes, and that's what the problem was in California. I did not want to turn something on here in West Virginia for a political talking point. I wanted, when it is turned on in West Virginia, I want it to work properly, and it will when it gets turned on. Mac Warner is the best thing that happened to AVR in West Virginia. If we had turned it on like she did and it would have broken, people would have thrown it out forever. I'm going to have it turned on properly.
Secretary Tennant?
Wow. Wow. West Virginia was supposed to have it. Republicans and Democrats felt that it was time for West Virginia to have it. Now we're being left behind. We were the third state to pass it. Now we're left behind all the other states. If he wants to talk about automatic voter registration, it should have been implemented in 2017. He came and said, no, we can't do it. And then he's asked for delay after delay because he didn't try. I mean, he's already established the fact that he won't try things. He just automatically says no. He hears one negative thing and he says, no, we can't do it. No, it's like that's what you learn from. We learn from other people's mistakes. You learn from your own trip-ups too, and he's refusing to do that. So a couple of things. When you talked about, and we'll get back to AVR, I have a feeling, because the voters, again, want it, and it's not fair that he hasn't kept the promise of the legislature, and he's just pulling up this fear and falsehood again to say why we can't have it. I tell you why we can have things and why West Virginia deserves to have things. But here's the deal. Like I would ask you, David, you know, why did you not clean up the voter rolls? Why didn't you use ERIC? Why didn't you use the Electronic Registration Information System? Because you weren't there and you weren't Secretary of State. I put in place, and that's what I would like to say, you know, will he acknowledge that he is using the system that I put in place, that we started to make it easier for him, that he's taking credit for? Believe me, I would have done it, but I didn't have the opportunity. And so when he says these things, it's like, you know, who did it, who said it, and who did it? Well, I did it. I put it in place. Like, what does he put in place for the next advances for voting? He doesn't have anything that he can say that he put in place. He hasn't started looking at ranked choice voting. He hasn't started looking at risk limiting audits. The one thing that he put in place was mobile voting app that MIT said was so bad and so vulnerable and so hackable that he's not even using that anymore. So that's my point here. You can talk and talk and talk, but when someone puts and sets it up and sets you up for success, dang on, you might want to give me a little bit of credit for that.
Could I address
Yes,
Gary?
you may.
The Electronic Registration Information Center
Please do.
she implemented. She did so, and when she turned it on, she did it before it was ready. And so what happened is 300,000 of these cards went out to people, many of whom were deceased, had moved, and it caused husbands and wives who had lost their spouses to call into the office and complain because they were receiving cards when the spouse had died 4 years earlier and they were being told it's now time to register to vote. That's the sort of infrastructure that I'm talking about that we made sure was working properly before we turned it on. And that's what I'm afraid of with the AVR trying to get it turned on too soon. So let's talk, and I started to mention earlier the distinction between the two of us. She just comes up with an idea because she's here, it's working in Oregon. So let's throw it in here, and she gets credit for AVR or whatever the system is, without the proper infrastructure being in place. I talk to the clerks who have to actually implement it. And when the clerks tell me, no, we don't want same-day registration, we don't want drop boxes, we're not ready for AVR to be turned on because of the massive amount of names that are going to be coming in, and if the data doesn't work between the two systems properly, then the clerks have to go back and clean that up, and we were getting that at about 50 per day just under the old system. If now you turn on AVR, it's going to be on the order of magnitude of 500 and 600 a day of mistakes coming into the clerk's offices that they have to clean up. They don't have the manpower or the funding to do it.
That's
why.
That is just not true. I've talked to county clerks. I've watched them do it. I was down in Greenbrier County. It takes 2 minutes. They love the online voter registration system. And some of the same arguments that he is making now was made for online voter registration like more than 5 years ago. We just got it in place 5 years ago. But we had been working to build that up. So, you know, when you talk about a couple hundred coming in, divide that by 55 counties. That's only, 9, 12 of them. That's not a huge push for the counties, and they can do that. And here's what he's basically saying, West Virginia. This is what he's saying to you, because I have voters, I have residents of West Virginia who go on my social media, who say in person, why don't we have automatic voter registration? Or why don't we have this? And why hasn't he done that? Why won't they answer the phone in the Secretary of State's office? He's basically ignoring you to make his own points. 4 years. How long does it take to get something together? Instead of just saying no automatically right off the bat, he has 4 years to figure it out, and he hasn't done it because he didn't want to listen to you and he didn't want to listen to the legislature. I will look forward and say that West Virginia, we can do it. You do deserve to have innovation and advances.
I am going to call an end to the discussion, this general part of the discussion, and I know that everyone likes to have the last word. Secretary Warner will try and make that happen for you the next time. We're going to take a 5-minute break, if we can, to hear from some of our sponsors who we love. So we ask all of you to please stay with us during our commercial break. We will be right back with this edition of our debate doubleheader that features Secretary Mac Warner and Secretary Natalie Tennant. Stay with us.
West Virginia is Trump country, and Mac Warner is working with President Trump to keep America great. Mac Warner cleaned up the Secretary of State's office and is fighting against election fraud. Pro-Trump, conservative, West Virginia Secretary of State Mac Warner.
Hello, I am Chuck Hurst, Republican candidate for House District 62. I've lived in the area for over 40 years and raised my family here. I'm a liberty-minded candidate, and I believe that less government is better. As the pro-business candidate, I know that we need to create a better business environment, which will create better-paying jobs and expand our tax base without raising taxes. I'm pro-Second Amendment, pro-life, and endorsed by the WVCDL, the NRA, and West Virginians for Life. I'm Chuck Hurst, and I humbly ask for your vote this election day.
Paid for by candidate.
Looking to buy a home in the Eastern Panhandle? Having trouble getting your house sold? Then call Chris Ross and the Milestone Real Estate Group at Keller Williams. A Martinsburg High School graduate, Chris knows the local market, and he's proven it as the #1 real estate team in West Virginia in 2019. Milestone Real Estate Group at Keller Williams. Phone 304-579-7349 or go to callchrisross.com. Let's celebrate your real estate milestone together.
When it comes to breast cancer, early detection is the key to saving lives. The first 4 Saturdays in October, WVU Medicine is offering 3D mammogram screening clinics to women 40 and older at our women's imaging centers in Ranson and Spring Mills for just $60. This discounted fee is designed to help patients who haven't met their deductible, whose insurance doesn't include a mammogram with an annual exam, or for those with no insurance. Schedule your 3D mammogram with WVU Medicine today by calling 1-888-802-2734, option 2.
Mayhem is everywhere.
I'm your new bangs, and you can't stop staring at me. That's it. Just tilt the rearview mirror over here. And while you're checking me out more times than a library book, your car is wandering into that lane over there. More bangs. Neat. And if you've got cut rate insurance, you could be paying for this yourself. So get Allstate.
Call Martinsburg Allstate agent Gary Kelly today at 304-263-4596.
We West Virginians take pride in our character. We never give up. But the lack of broadband access was holding us back. When I came to the Senate, I launched Capito Connect to bring high-speed internet to all of our communities. Because this is about you and your family. It's about our children's education. It's about our health care. It's about our economic opportunities. I'm Shelley Moore Capito, and I approve this message because together we will all be connected.
A DUI arrest can have a devastating impact on one's life, your job, your driver's license, and in some cases your very freedom. My name is Harley Wagner. I own and operate West Virginia's only exclusive DUI defense firm. Since 1999, I've been representing citizens throughout the Eastern Panhandle and state of West Virginia charged with DUI. Let my years of training and experience work for you.
The initial consultation is free at the Wagner Law Firm in Martinsburg. Phone 304-901-7400 or online at westvirginiaduilawyers.com.
Fall is here at Taylor's Farm Market and the Cider Press Deli and Grill. Stop by for some of our apple cider donuts, fresh cider, and everyone's favorites, our delicious apple pie and apple dumplings. We also have some beautiful Big Mums for only $9.99 each. Experience local flavor at the Cider Press Deli and Grill in Inwood. We have something for everyone. We're open Monday through Saturday from 11 a.m. to 8 p.m. for lunch and dinner. Check out our menu at ciderpressdeliandgrill.com. Taylor's Farm Market and the Cider Press Deli and Grill at 178 Pilgrim Street in Inwood.
When you do the same thing for 135 years, you learn to do it well.
For 135 years, we've been helping families through the hardest times of their lives. That's because we're a family as well. When your family loses a loved one, we're here to help. We're Brown Funeral Home in Martinsburg, Inwood, and Charlestown, Ranson. We're here when you need us.
I had to pack up all my things. I had to leave my home. And I never knew where I was going next. It felt like I never even had a say. But then you came along.
Change a child's story. There's a child in foster care waiting for a volunteer like you.
To change a child's story, go to mycasaep.org.
West Virginia is Trump country, and Mac Warner is working with President Trump to keep America great. Mac Warner cleaned up the Secretary of State's office and is fighting against election fraud. Pro-Trump, conservative, West Virginia Secretary of State, Mac Warner.
Welcome back, everyone, to the second half of our debate that matches Secretary of State Mac Warner and former Secretary of State Natalie Tennant. They are the Republican and Democratic nominees for Secretary of State with an election only 2 weeks away. Certainly this debate we would think being very important to a lot of you, especially those of you who are undecided. Our first category centered on voter confidence, ballot security, and voting by mail. Our second category is going to fall under the umbrella of improving the operations of the Secretary of State. West Virginia taxpayers expect their elected officials to operate their offices efficiently and effectively. Both of you have served or are now serving as Secretary of State. What have you done to improve the operations of the Secretary of State's office, and what would you like to do in the future? Secretary Tennant, we will begin with you for a 2-minute answer, followed by Secretary Warner.
I appreciate that, and thank you for recognizing this, because I am so proud of the work that we did over the last 8 years in the Secretary of State's office. When I was Secretary of State, I modernized the office. I'm known as an innovator. I modernized the office and I streamlined it. And what that did was save businesses money, save the office money, was able to give back money. So here's what I did. I moved to online filings for annual reports. And when I got to the Secretary of State's office, about 11%, only 11% of businesses were filing their annual reports online. And by the time I left, we'd pushed it up to 90%. So do you see the efficiencies that was brought in there by doing that? And as I did that also, I listened to business owners who said, Natalie, you're pushing us to go online. This is great, but there's also a transaction fee that's being charged in that. And so I looked at that and I said, you're right, there is a fee there, but as opposed to having employees have to fill out stacks like this and do handiwork, I said, we will absorb that fee, and I took it off businesses. Now, he comes in and he puts it back on the businesses, which is not a good thing. It's like you can't nickel and dime businesses. So I brought the efficiencies like that into the Secretary of State's office. What I also did was bring an online chat, like many major businesses do, to be able to interact with customers. You go on and you can talk to a representative from the Secretary of State's office. And I believe that he has taken that off, which is a real shame, because in this era of COVID, you need those online services even more. And here's what I intend to do when I'm back in the Secretary of State's office to improve the efficiency of the Secretary of State's office is make that a Zoom connection too. We are all so accustomed to Zoom now that a business owner could say, I need to talk to you in the office, and the employee can say, all right, I'm going to set this up, I'm going to set you send you a link, and we'll talk at 11:45. That's an efficiency that I do intend to bring to the Secretary of State's office. We'll talk a little bit more about the business aspect and bringing jobs and helping jobs in our next segment, David. But I also wanted to talk about, I opened up the office and an understanding and had live webcasts when it came to the meetings and the things that we would have within the Secretary of State's office. So it was an attitude of efficiency, cut off of the paperwork to save money. That helped businesses, that helped the office, and that's what I'll continue to do.
Secretary Warner, your turn to tell us what you have done and would like to do to improve the operations of the Secretary of State's office.
Thank you, David. And I'd like the people of West Virginia to know that when I took office, that office was an absolute pigsty, literally and figuratively. It was difficult to walk through, to negotiate through that office because of the mounds of paper and the disorganization. It showed a cluttered office as a cluttered mind, and that was exactly what was going on. People would call into that office and you get either no answer or one answer on one day, call back later, and get a completely different answer. And that's where I get back to the whole collaboration that I started off this discussion with, and that is the necessity of making sure everybody on your staff is talking together with one voice, where you talk between your lawyer, your legal staff, your chief of staff, your communications director, and the people who are in the know, the business and licensing specialists, the ones who work this on a day-to-day basis. So the first thing we did is we cleaned up that office and got rid of all the junk that was laying around. We also started operating the Secretary of State's office just like you would a business. That is, if there's excess, you get rid of it. And so that's exactly what we did from day one. And now the office is operating very efficiently, very effectively. There's not one aspect of that office that we haven't literally transformed. Where my opponent talks about bringing things online, we have now taken that with the electronic registration and licensing system to 100%. It's not just online registration or UCC. We're talking about apostilles. We're talking marriage celebrants. We're talking scrap metal dealers, sports agents, notaries, charities. All of that now is coming online because of the transformation that we've made. That's just one area. Election night reporting, it was absolutely broken. In fact, the 2016 election, it broke because they hadn't properly tested it. The campaign finance reporting is completely, we have the most transparent in the nation now because of the changes that we've made. It's one thing after another. We are going with modernization, the ERLS that I just mentioned, a $1 million program. So where she wasn't using the money the way it was appropriated for a talking point to say I returned it to the state, we're spending it on the type of innovation that is making it easier for people to start businesses, update their businesses here in West Virginia, and keep those jobs and the economy rolling. So those are the sort of things that we have done. I intend to continue to do that. She'll make a point about a portal that wasn't done. That's out on the advertisements that she has right now. Folks, that portal has been in place for 2 years now. We, in fact, received a national award from State Scoop because of the innovation of what we have done in that actual business and licensing center. So there's a problem with truthfulness with regards to misinformation that is going out from my opponent. We have transformed that office. She is a self-proclaimed innovator. I'm not a self-proclaimed innovator. Talk to the people. Talk to the business people who use our office. Talk to the voters. Talk to the campaigns. Talk to everybody who uses that office. Talk to the clerks and see which office is more responsive now, the one that they have right now or the one under her tenure. Thank you.
Thank you, Secretary Warner. In
So I get to respond to that.
Would you like to?
Right, yeah.
Okay, well, you have to let me know.
Because,
Sure.
I mean, that's really a cheap shot. I mean, do people talk like that? You know, it was a pigsty. I mean, that is so petty, and it's such a cheap shot. Do you think that if I come back and say something, I know the way we left that office, and I have pictures. Would you like to see them, Mac?
We have pictures, too.
I can show you the cleanliness and the way that we left that office. So for you to say something like that is just petty and small, and it's like, oh, it was a pigsty, really? I mean, come on, folks. That's not the professional that I am. It's not the professional that I've ever been. And you want to talk about searching for talking points, that's exactly what that is. I mean, I can tell you, I've talked to people time and time again. They will come up to me and they will say, Natalie, I can't get them to answer the phone at the Secretary of State's office. And I look at them like, I'd like to be able to help you, but I can't. I mean, that's an unfortunate thing. And I even had this situation with my neighbor who probably did not vote for me. He's kind of on the other side. He talked to me and said, I can't get to answer the phone. And I said, well, did you try 558-8000? That's the one that goes straight into corporations. And then I see him later. He's pulling out of his driveway, and I'm walking around the block, and he's like, I'm just driving down there. I can't get them to answer the phone. I'm just driving down there. And I'm like, that is really unfortunate. And so this is why they can't answer the phone. When you fire a third of your staff, no wonder you don't know how to answer the phone. No wonder you don't know how to send information to information. He illegally fired 16 people, cost the state $4 million, the largest payout in state history. People like Lena, who worked there was 2 weeks shy of her 20 years. had given so much to the Secretary of State's office, and like that, she was gone without cause, without thought, without even an interview from him. So West Virginians know that's not right. He still to this day will say and besmirch their character and smear what they've done and criticize their work ethic. And that's not right. That is not right, and I will stand up for that. That's why I'm running this race on decency and dignity that needs to be brought back to the Secretary of State's office. So when he says these little petty things and these little snide remarks, don't believe it, because it's not true. I can give you the same amount of people who tell you that they want me back in the office because it has been run so poorly.
Now, that started out as a rebuttal to his comment, to Mac's comment about how he left the office, and then you went from that point, which is fine, by the way, I don't mind. You went from that point into the issue of the employees that happened in, that decision was made in 2018. Since that was going to be my next question, I'm going to count that as a response to that, your response to that issue, since you got to introduce it, and then go to Secretary Warner for a response to the point that you made about the employees, because there has been a fair amount of controversy about this issue.
Well, and there we go again, a lack of fidelity to the truth. I want the voters of West Virginia to know there was absolutely nothing illegal about what happened. Every one of those employees was under an at-will employment signed contract. That means they can be let go at any time for any reason, good reason, bad reason, or no reason at all. And when I had identified that they were not oriented towards the customer service that I was accustomed to with the military and the State Department, that I wanted to bring into the Secretary of State's office, that's why I made that decision. I've used the analogy of a military plane leaving the ground heading to a destination unknown, and there are a certain number of seats. And if you have people on that airplane that are causing trouble or not doing the job properly, you're going to land with those same people, and now you're dealing with issues outside the mission that needs to be accomplished. I had a mission to accomplish. The voters of West Virginia elected me to that office to do a job, and I wanted the right people in the right seats to do the job, and that's why we've been able to accomplish so much in this office. With regards to the phone calls specifically, let me tell you what we've done with the phone system. We've opened up offices in Clarksburg and Martinsburg, right here where we stand today, and because of the growth in this area, we wanted to take this office out to the people and into the where the economy is booming, so that people could start their businesses and grow their businesses. And with that, we enabled a phone system that allows people here in Martinsburg to answer phone calls that are coming into the Charleston office. That's the type of innovation that we are doing to make sure that we are responding to the customers. Try our office and see if we don't answer that phone call and get your answers or your questions answered in a very quick and speedy fashion. We in fact went to Amazon and watched the way they do their phone tree, where you use artificial intelligence to answer the routine. It's called Tier 1 questions. So the routine questions that come in, say in an elections arena, what date is the election, what is the early voting period, what's the last day to register. Those are Tier 1 things that you don't need a person to answer. You can answer with, say, like you do with Siri. Just ask Siri a question and it responds. That's the sort of innovation that we're moving towards in my second term, and that's why I asked for your vote to send me back for a second term.
Can I just say something? I'd just like to ask him.
Sure you can.
Did we do that in Fairmont under my administration when we had an office at the state office building where we answered the phones, whether it was in Charleston or Fairmont? Did I have that?
You had an office in Fairmont that's your own hometown, where I moved it to Clarksburg, where it's closer to being the one-stop orientation that we have in Charleston, co-aligned with the auditor's office to save the people of West Virginia
money. You're saying that
money.
I did have it. So when you put out something that says the first in history, and I might just pull that out, he says it's the first in history ever to have a hub. I had a hub in Fairmont because that's where the state office building was opened. So when I paid rent, guess what, folks? It went back to you. It went back to general revenue to the state of West Virginia. And he moved it to the hometown of his chief communications director to make it easier for him to work from there. But guess what? He's not paying you. He did not put it into the state office building, and that's just unconscionable to move that. So yes, if you caught it there, he acknowledged that I have it. If you caught it there, he acknowledged that he's not the first, and he's not this innovation. It was something that I had already. And as a matter of fact, I did live webcasts from there. When's the last time that he did one of those as part of innovation? But I want to get back to this real quick, Dave. He talks a lot about being in the military. I know what it's like in the military. I'm a nearly 20-year spouse, military spouse. So I know what the sacrifices are, and I know what it does to a family. And I thank him for his service, and I thank your wife, Debbie, for her service too. I also know this. I also know that just because you're in the military does not give you the right to break the law. Now, he will shout and he will say all the things that he wants to say, that it wasn't illegally firings of those 16 employees. Well, that's not what court records show right now. Court records show that they were illegally fired because they filed a complaint with him because they claimed that they were illegally fired because of their party affiliation. And that's what was found. And that is what is in court documents. And if you don't believe the court documents, that's fine. You want to believe him? Believe his deposition. Believe the deposition where he says all of this information. It's on my website. It's public knowledge because, remember, he wanted to go to court for it, but it would have cost even more than $4 million. Here's the other thing. Here's the other employment law violation that he made. One of his own supporters wanted a job, and he said, Rick's a nice guy. He's a great supporter of ours, but he's about my age, so I'm not sure of the energy and enthusiasm level. Let's look for the other guy or gal. That's age discrimination, folks. Had that gone to court, what do you think would have happened? You'd have spent even more money. And even in the deposition, as you go and look a little bit further in the deposition, the lawyers gave him a chance to change it. He's like, no, I think that's a correct assessment of Rick. So don't be fooled by all of this. Go to the deposition. Don't be fooled all of these fun words. This is serious stuff, folks. This is what he thinks of you and what he thinks of the state of West Virginia. And we're not even through with that. There's more.
Secretary Ted, let me follow up on that, if I may, because this issue, again, got so much attention and it continues to be something that really, the interpretation of it still divides, obviously, the two of you, and I think there's some confusion on it in the public. Secretary Warner talks about, he used the word at will. I don't know if everybody understands what at will means or not, but he says every one of them signed a contract agreeing to be an at will employee, meaning that they serve at the pleasure of the elected official who occupies that job at the time that they do. Mm-hmm. Is there any, in your mind, is there any validity to the fact, or to his opinion, that those were at-will employees, and therefore it was not illegal for him to dismiss those employees because he could. It was legal. Any thought on that?
You can, yes, they could be referred to as will and pleasure or at will, but that doesn't mean he has the will and pleasure to just fire them because of their age, or he doesn't have the will and pleasure to fire them because of their political affiliation. There is precedent in this. There are opinions that are written that are based off of this. I mean, I'm thinking if we had, we highlighted the story. I talk about Lena, but we also highlighted the story of Nancy, and I think I have that on the website too, her complaint. It will go down through and show why, in court case after court case, that defends and says why she cannot be illegally fired by political affiliation. And that's been in court. Now that's a court document.
Let me ask you a question, Secretary Warner. I'm trying to understand if you know the difference. If Congressman Alex Mooney or Governor Jim Justice were to be defeated in this year's election and replaced by their opponents, no one would bat an eye that they would be able to hire their own people and bring them in. So is there a difference? Is it tradition, cultural, law? What's the difference? What makes the Secretary of State's office different than the other elections that are partisan elections? And I'm trying to get my arms around that.
Well, thank you so much, because all this is based on her and her lawyers, or the employees' lawyers' assertion, not any fact, nothing based in truth whatsoever. Politics never came into this discussion whatsoever. And I've been advised not to talk about people's names, but since she has actually raised those two names right here, and it's on her commercials, one of those employees is somebody who on 2 occasions, this is a receptionist at the front desk when I came into the office to try to sign up to run for office, was completely ignored. She was talking on the phone with a personal friend about what they were doing that weekend. The other receptionist was playing video games on her phone and completely ignored me. It happened a second time after I came back into the office after being elected. That's why I made the decision on those individuals. When she keeps mentioning the elections director, there were time and time again, they lost Supreme Court cases, 5-0 decisions where the Supreme Court, West Virginia Supreme Court, lambasted the Secretary of State because of the partisan political decisions that she was making that were completely wrong. Time and again, that came out of that elections office. That's why I didn't keep that elections official, because I wanted to bring in somebody who was oriented towards listening to the clerks, listening to the lawyers, and getting things done properly. So again, we have this problem with fidelity to the truth. We're not being truthful. She invited a lawyer into that office to solicit that business, completely unethical. So there's a lot of background here that's never been exposed, and I'm glad that we have this opportunity.
Can you wrap this up, because I do have at least one more important question.
He's had people file ethics complaints against those employees to try to intimidate them not to file those reports. We haven't even talked about that. Your buddies filed ethics complaints against them, filed one against me. Guess what? For naught. There wasn't anything there. He's the one who had a lawyer interview these folks. So here's the thing. Like, what are we supposed to believe here? You don't want to believe two talking heads, two people vying for office? That's fine. How about legalese? How about legal documents, depositions that he swore to? He's under oath swearing to what he said in these depositions, and the emails that go back and forth. There's a systematic look at he's going to hire all of these Republicans and get rid of all these Democrats. And guess what?
That is absolutely false.
That's what happens. But that's what's in the deposition that you agreed to.
It's absolutely false. 100% false, folks.
Then why did you sign off on that deposition?
It's not in there. You're misstating the facts. There's a lack of fidelity to the truth.
Please go to my website, because here's the other thing. Here's the other thing he talks about. The elections director, do you know what's in that deposition? This is where they talk about her. They say, we're going to transition her. We're going to capture knowledge and transition her out. What is that? That is a sneaky thing. So all I say, folks, is a legal document that he signed off on.
I hope you'll allow me now to move on to what could be our final question because of the time. Some debates, you get more into depth into some issues than others. We will not be going to the third category, I can tell you that. Secretary Tennant, you have accused Secretary Warner of employing an individual who is using state-paid time to hold a second job as a radio talk show host. Secretary Warner, you have called the accusation, in your words, a desperate lie. You both cannot be correct on this issue. Secretary Tennant, please clarify your accusation, and Secretary Warner, you may follow with a response.
Thank you.
Thank you. He allows a full-time and state employee to work a second job during state hours. He admits that. He will admit that that's what it is, because they finally sent me the documents. This is the thing. We asked for them back in July for this. So then I put my commercial out, and they finally, after 3 months later of a FOIA request, send it out. So he admits that. And on this gentleman's time cards, his work schedule is 8 to 4. Sometimes it says 8 a.m. to 4:30, but he leaves at 8:30 and comes back at 10:30. So he is working during state hours. So we looked at this and we thought, well, is he taking annual time? Is he taking comp time? No, he's taking your time. West Virginians, this is not the real West Virginia in the real world. We're not allowed to. We all have second jobs, but we do it off time, not on state time, as I'm talking about. It's not what West Virginians do. I mean, you can't be a teacher in Jefferson County and then a half hour into your lesson say, sorry, students, I got to go work my other job. That's what we're talking about. And then the worst part of it is that he deliberately hid it from the public, deliberately hid it from you, deliberately hid it from the listeners on the radio station. Because guess what? His own employee interviewed him, and it's common practice that you would disclose, oh, I work for the Secretary of State. We see news organizations all the time say, you know, CBS, they're an affiliate of CBS. They didn't offer that up to the listeners. So they're deliberately hiding it and deliberately allowing a state employee to work during state hours.
Secretary Warner?
This is what, the fourth or fifth time where we're talking about lack of fidelity to the truth? It is simply not true what she's saying.
He doesn't work there?
This individual came to us with the request. He had been recruited or asked to work at the radio station. He has radio skills, and so we allowed that. He brought it to us. We took it to our personnel people. We took it to the lawyer. We took it to the chief of staff. Everybody approved this because he can work other hours. He's got a type of job. He's a field representative. Many times our field representatives are working well past 4 o'clock. Many of them start working well before 8 o'clock. That 8 to 4 is an oasis thing. It's a time period that the state uses as a baseline. But that doesn't mean that you can only work between 8 and 4. So what she is asserting is that nobody should be allowed to work a second job just because you work for the Secretary of State's office. We know that's ludicrous. Many people have to work double jobs to make ends meet. So there's absolutely nothing wrong with what he's doing. It's all legal. It's all open. It's all, I'll share it with anybody, the contract. He brought it to us ahead of time. We approved it. The radio station certainly isn't going to use somebody while they're working on state time. So it's simply an attempt by her to mislead the voters of West Virginia to try to come up with a political talking point.
Why didn't you disclose it to the people when you were on the radio with him?
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Why didn't you say, hey, Dave, you're an employee of mine? Why didn't Dave say, oh, I'm interviewing Secretary of State Mac Warner. I just want you to know I work full-time for him. That's courtesy. Dave Welch, you do that. There's a lot of different people who are on air who give this disclosure. It's called disclosure and disclaimer. Why did you hide it from the people of West Virginia?
I have, again, no idea what you're talking about.
I'm just worried about any radio talk show host named Dave, but I mean, we'll just...
But here's the thing. He said he has flexible hours. Boy, wouldn't you love to have flexible hours like that? I mean, when teachers finish a job, at 3 or 4 or 5 in the afternoon, then they go to a second job. They're not doing it on their teaching time. Lots of people have second jobs. Lots of Secretary of State employees have second jobs. And here's the thing, they're giving him flexible hours. We're in the time period of COVID where things have been clamped down so much more. Guess what? Courthouses are closed. There are limited hours that they're even open. Who the heck is he going to see at 6 or 7 in the evening during COVID time?
I'm going to try and bring this to an end. And again, my apologies for being a lousy timekeeper because we didn't get to all of the issues I'm sure that some of our listeners and viewers would have liked to have addressed, or even the two of you. But I do think we got into quite a few issues, and it was a most interesting hour. I'm going to give each of you 2 minutes, and I'm going to ask you to please stay to it. I'm going to time you this time, because we do have a deadline that we need to now end this debate. I'm going to start with you, Secretary Tennant, for a 2-minute closing statement, and then go to you, Secretary Warner.
I appreciate that, and thank you, Dave, and thank you for being willing to come in and be in the middle of this. But you are exactly right. This is so important to see. We have 2 records here. We have a record of moving forward, of pushing forward, of, yes, challenging West Virginia, of being innovative, as opposed to a record of looking for excuses why we can't do something, we can't do this, we can't do that, or a record of being open and honest and transparent, where there's one here that we didn't even get a chance to talk about the wasteful money that's being done, and then the secrecy and the hurtfulness of the way that you treat people. I'm proud of the way that we treated people in West Virginia, and you just saw right there. That's the difference. You're not able to take a second job and work on it where your first main job is. It's just not what happens. You're not, if a police officer in Bridgeport, could leave his post and go work a second job, that's not right. West Virginians don't have that luxury afforded to the privileged few in Mac Warner's inner circle. This isn't just about politics as usual. This is about talking and fighting the corruption and truly draining the swamp that has become the Secretary of State's office from all of these different points that I have made. I love our state, and I love our people, and that's why I'm running again. I am running for the everyday West Virginian, not just those who have the connections. That's why this is a fight for dignity and decency for all of West Virginians who deserve to strive for that every day. I believe in West Virginia, and I will continue to push forward. I will continue to be brave so West Virginia can be bold. I will do that for West Virginia, and I ask for your vote. Natalie Tennant for Secretary of State.
Thank you, Secretary. Secretary Warner, please, 2 minutes for a closing statement.
Thank you. I'm Mac Warner. I'm West Virginia Secretary of State. I'm running for re-election. I was honored when you elected me to this office, and I appreciate your support once again. What we've seen here this evening is the debate that allows us to draw distinctions between the 2 candidates, and I think it's very clear that what you've seen here this evening. that my opponent has a lack of fidelity to the truth, to the law, and to the West Virginia voters. With regards to truth, her entire campaign is based on falsehoods, where she talks about my illegal firing of people. There was nothing illegal about it. I begged for those cases to court. There is no court determination of any wrongdoing whatsoever. She said that the employee is allowed to work a second job on state time. Completely false. She said we didn't establish a portal. The portal we established has won national recognition. So again, time and time and time again, a lack of fidelity to the truth, a lack of fidelity to the law. I think we all remember, as Secretary of State, her campaigning on the courthouse steps. She lost numerous cases at the state Supreme Court, failed in their job time and time again in the elections division, costing the state hundreds of thousands of dollars. She even allowed a convicted felon onto the ballot that embarrassed the state when he almost got as many votes as President Obama in the West Virginia election. The main thing she's failed in the law is following the law with list maintenance, not keeping the voter rolls clean. I've done that. I've cleaned that up with the help of the county clerks. The West Virginia voters, she is completely out of touch with the West Virginia voters, having been a delegate for Obama, for Clinton. Even after they said they put coal miners out of business, she continued to do so, as she does with Obama, and the craziness of the Green New Deal and all the other things that are going to break the back of West Virginia, the energy industry. Mainly, however, it's her advocacy for things such as vote by mail, same-day registration, all the things that she would try to implement over top of the objection of the county clerks. With regards to me, I'm an Eagle Scout. I went to West Point. I was on the honor committee at West Point. I attended the University of Virginia, where I got a master's degree in law. We had perhaps the most stringent honor system in academia, and I served in the United States Army for 23 years as a JAG officer, the backbone of integrity of the most trusted institution in America. As far as the law, adhering to the law, we did this primary and stayed within the confines of the law. If you like the primary, you're going to love the general election. Finally, I am unabashedly for President Donald J. Trump and what he's doing for West Virginia. He is unabashedly a supporter of the Second Amendment, freedom of religion, the life, guns, everything that makes the individual empowered, and that's how he's making America great. It's how we're going to make West Virginia great again, is supporting those kinds of policies. So folks, again, I'm Mac Warner. I'm running for re-election as Secretary of State. I appreciate your vote and your support. Thank you this evening for this.
And that will do it. Thank you both for participating in this debate. We wish you both the very best in your campaigns, and we thank you, our viewers in the Eastern Panhandle and throughout West Virginia, for tuning in. Keep in mind that this has been recorded. You can tell your friends to watch it on the Stubblefield Institute Facebook or to go on the Martinsburg TV 10 YouTube channel and watch it as well. I think you would all agree with me that it is certainly a debate worth watching. With that being said, from the Stubblefield Institute for Civil Political Communications at Shepherd University, and also my friends at WRNR and Martinsburg TV 10, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Good night.